Chapter 766. The old warden and the judge had been thinking about the same thing. It was also something that puzzled them. How did Mr. Lin manage to enter the Nine Heavens world alone? Now they knew. Since he could even control a true immortal-level immortal beast, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find a way to enter the Nine Heavens world. Not only did he not have to fear immortal devouring beasts, he also had a rank 7 immortal beast by his side, so he didn't have to fear the immortal beast hordes in the immortal realm. That was why he was able to stroll around so casually. The old warden had already decided to break into the mortal realm, so he didn't want to miss out on this opportunity. Previously, the judge was still hesitating, but at this moment, he finally made up his mind and walked forward. Lin Jin looked at the judge and the vertical eye on his forehead. He could tell that the man was a true immortal expert. There were a few true immortals in the immortal prison, but this one had excellent concealment skills. On the surface, he looked just like a pseudo-immortal. "Mr. Lin, you're from Middle-earth. May I know why you've come to the Nine Heavens world?" the judge asked. Lin Jin frowned. "I don't think I have to tell you that, do I?" Indeed, Lin Jin had no intention of telling anyone about his purpose. After all, the fewer people who knew about this, the better. The judge hurriedly waved his hands. "Mr. Lin has misunderstood. I was once a 6th-grade judge of the dynasty. Now that the immortal Tao has been in decline for 2,000 years, it's hard for it to rise again. If it wasn't for Mr. Lin, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to break free even if we died. In this case, Mr. Lin is naturally our benefactor. Now that the Nine Heavens mystic realm has no ruler, Mr. Lin just so happened to be here, and you have mastered the art of blood pact. In the future, you will definitely achieve great things. I hope you'll grant me my wish." Having said that, the judge bowed respectfully. The man was now a true immortal expert. It was Lin Jin's first time seeing such a person bow to him. However, the judge's words did make Lin Jin fall into deep thought. This was quite attractive. Between the lines, he was just short of asking Lin Jin to establish a new system similar to that of a celestial dynasty so that he could rule over the 9 realms and stand above everyone else. Anyone would be tempted by this, and Lin Jin was no exception. However, he soon calmed down. This wasn't his goal. In the beginning, Lin Jin also wanted to become an immortal, but after experiencing so many things, he no longer cared about it. Being immortal was fine too, and compared to that, Lin Jin preferred to pursue a stable life. What was stability? No one could threaten him. That was the premise. That was why Lin Jin came to the Nine Heavens Xian world. He wanted to find a way to promote Little Fire to rank 8 or even rank 9. His purpose was not to kill the rank 9 immortal devouring beast, but to seek a balance. If the immortal devouring beast changed its mind and attacked him, at least he would have a way to deal with it. Moreover, Lin Jin was someone who lacked a sense of security, especially for a transmigrator like him. With a monster that could destroy the world right above his head, if Lin Jin didn't have the ability to deal with the incoming danger, he wouldn't be able to sleep well. More importantly, it would be fine if he didn't have the ability to do so. If others could just muddle through and pretend they didn't see anything, Lin Jin could do the same. But the problem was, Lin Jin clearly had the ability to evolve his pet beast. That was why he chose this path. Also, whenever Lin Jin had nothing better to do, he would use his fingers to count the number of enemies he had, and it turned out to be quite a lot. If Lin Jin didn't have a strong enough deterrence, his enemies would probably come knocking on his door the next day. Moreover, some of his enemies would definitely return. Lin Jin knew this. Hence, Lin Jin wasn't interested in building a new dynasty. But if he could gather a small team to help him find what he needed to help Little Fire evolve, that would be possible. After some thought, Lin Jin didn't reject the man. It was a good thing that someone was willing to join him. Moreover, Lin Jin really needed help right now. Just then, Little Fire and the 100 beasts returned. This time, they had captured a rank 7 immortal beast. It was a large peacock that exuded a frosty aura. There was pride in the peacock's eyes, but more than that, it was indignant. It was helpless after being captured by Little Fire and the 100 Beasts. Xiaohua's attributes were clearly superior to the peacock's. It really is at the level of a true immortal. The warehouse supervisor from before was extremely excited. After all, his physical cultivation was only at the peak of a pseudo-immortal, not even at the level of a true immortal. And this ice peacock was so powerful that he wouldn't dare to provoke it if he was alone. But now, he could control it through a blood contract. Since he was so dependent on it, so what if he had to give up his immortal cultivation? He believed that it was easy to tell whether he had gained more or lost more. Using this as an excuse, he managed to break his immortality and form a blood contract with this ice peacock at the level of a true immortal. Little did he know, it was Lin Jin who gave him the blood contract. If it were him, he wouldn't have been able to form a blood contract with a true immortal pet beast. Time trickled by. Almost half of the immortals in the immortal prison chose to break their immortality and enter the mortal realm. Lin Jin also captured immortal beasts for them to form blood contracts with. They chose to give up their cultivation and become mortals. Even if some of them were nearing the end of their lifespan, they might only have less than 10 years left after becoming mortals. To immortals, 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. But to mortals, there were many things that could be done in 10 years. Moreover, once they got out, they would have a chance to find ways to extend their lifespans. Either way, it was better than waiting here and struggling at death's door. At least they had found a way out. Some chose to leave, and some chose to stay. Clearly, there were many immortals in the immortal prison who couldn't bear to part with the cultivation they had cultivated for hundreds and thousands of years, so they chose to stay. With their high cultivation and long lifespans, they could afford it. Lin Jin wouldn't force them either. They were all adults who were thousands of years old, so he didn't have to worry about what path they should take. However, it was certain that he wouldn't be able to find another opportunity after this one. Once he left, it would be too late for them to regret their decision. And so, Lin Jin left the immortal prison. Following him were about a dozen immortals who had returned to the mortal realm. At first, these people were terrified, afraid that they would provoke the immortal devouring beast. But as time passed, they realized that the immortal devouring beast wouldn't attack mortals. This made them feel much more at ease. Mr. Lin, if you're looking for the celestial golden pill, you don't have to go to the garden. You can just go to Old Lord's pelletization room. After all, many celestial golden pills were refined by Old Lord himself, the warehouse supervisor suggested. Lin Jin's eyes lit up. This was a great suggestion. After all, even the butterfly demoness couldn't be completely sure that there was a celestial golden pill in the garden. But if it was Old Lord's pelletization room, Lin Jin's chances would be much higher. More importantly, the pelletization room had an heaven and earth furnace. If he was lucky, Xiaohua could advance to rank 8 on this trip. Chapter 767. Unlike when they first arrived, Lin Jin now had more than 10 immortals by his side. It was a sight to behold. The butterfly demoness stayed on Lin Jin's shoulder in her original form, not daring to speak much. Most of the time, it was just the talkative immortals talking non-stop. Perhaps it had been 2,000 years since they had spoken so freely, or perhaps they had never been able to enjoy the scenery while talking. Mr. Lin, to think that the mortal world has experienced so many changes. If there's a chance, I'd like to visit the mortal world, one of the immortals said. He wasn't the only one. The other immortals who had ascended to the mortal world shared the same thought. After all, strictly speaking, they were now mortals. It was normal for mortals to enter the mortal world. It was said that the colorful world was a distraction. In the past, to stabilize their cultivation, they were also restricted by the rules of the 9 heavens world, so they didn't dare to descend to the mortal world. But now, no one could stop them. They could go wherever they wanted. Some even thought that traveling the mortal world wasn't a bad way to live. Also, they weren't just ordinary mortals. Although their cultivation was gone, they still had thousands of years of knowledge. In addition, they had immortal-grade pet beasts. Not only did some of the immortals not weaken, they even became stronger. Since this was all thanks to Lin Jin, they were more than willing to help out. The Nine Heavens world was huge. If they had to fly there, who knew how long it would take them to reach the Old Lord's pellet room? There's a teleportation formation up ahead. The foundation is a 10,000-year spirit stone. It can still be used even after 2,000 years, one of the immortals said confidently. When they arrived, it was as they expected. Although the house looked a little run-down due to the lack of maintenance, the teleportation formation was still intact. Spirit energy still swirled around it, slowly forming a beam of light. Had it been Lin Jin, he might not have known what it was used for even after seeing it. Now was the perfect time to show off the benefits of having a group of immortal followers. Without needing Lin Jin to worry, they started using the compass to determine their location. According to them, there were a total of 981 similar portals in the Nine Heavens realm, scattered throughout the realm. Even if they knew it was a portal, if they weren't familiar with the location, they might be teleported to an unknown location. If something happened to the teleportation formation there, it would be difficult to return. However, if it was used by someone familiar with the teleportation formation, it would be very convenient. The old Supreme Lord's pill formula is in a secret place in Shang Santian. Ordinary immortals don't know where it is, but I happen to know. I'll bring Mr. Lin there now. It'll only take a moment to use this teleportation formation, but if you want to fly there, it'll take 3 to 5 months, the immortal in charge of the warehouse said. There was a hint of pride in his words. Lin Jin nodded and thanked him for his hard work. The man was satisfied. Lin Jin didn't have to worry about anything else. He only needed these immortals to take care of things. Although they no longer had immortal cultivation, with the support of their pet beasts' blood contracts, they were quick and efficient. Soon, everything was ready. Activating the immortal formation, there was a sudden burst of light. Lin Jin felt the spirit energy around him condense, and the next instant, he saw a colorful stream before him. By the time the colors disappeared, he and the immortals were already somewhere else. This place was vast and boundless, and no one knew how big it was. There were stars and moons above their heads, and galaxies could be seen in the distance. However, this was not the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing was the gigantic pellet furnace before them. Lin Jin already had some understanding of this pellet furnace of heaven and earth. He had also heard some things about it, so he already knew what it was. But when he saw it for real, Lin Jin was still dumbfounded. You guys call this a pellet furnace? Lin Jin couldn't help but ask. Because what Lin Jin saw wasn't a pellet furnace, it was a tiny planet. A tiny planet in the Nine Heavens realm floated in the air. It was so huge that it was bigger than anything Lin Jin had seen so far. However, this wasn't just a tiny planet. It had been modified, or rather, refined. Its interior had been hollowed out, and it was said that 99,000 intense sun-fire formations had been installed inside to last for 10,000 years. However, the interior of this pellet furnace of heaven and earth was pitch black. The warehouse supervisor who introduced Lin Jin to this pellet furnace wore an awkward expression. He probably didn't expect the fire inside the old Supreme Lord's pellet furnace to be extinguished. Mainly because he didn't know how to activate old Supreme Lord's pellet furnace. But soon, the warehouse supervisor became excited again because he had helped Lin Jin find a place to store pills. There weren't any restrictions here, mainly because old Supreme Lord was so famous back in the day that even immortal emperors and empresses had to give him face, let alone regular immortals. So, who would dare to come here and steal? They would be courting death. It was also for this reason that the places where pills were stored were all wide open. For tens of thousands of years, No one had dared to come here and steal. This made things easier for Lin Jean. This also made things easier for the other fragmented immortals. They came here to help Lin Jean and also themselves. The pellet room of Old Supreme Lord was filled with pills. There were more than 100 types of pills that could extend one's lifespan. Since they had become mortals, their lifespans were only a few decades to 100 years. That was too short. If they wanted to enjoy life, they had to prepare some longevity pills. In fact, longevity pills weren't precious to them. Instead, pills that could aid in cultivation were hard to come by. For example, the celestial golden pill that could help a true immortal ascend to a carefree immortal. Each pill could cause a bloodbath in the world of immortals. Just like how heroes would fight for a beautiful woman, they would risk their lives and go all out. They would use any means at all. However, after fragmented immortals entered the mortal world, these pills that could aid in cultivation were no longer as appealing. They could even be said to be worthless. Just like how eunuchs would look at beautiful women, they had long lost the desire to do so. Now they only wished for one thing: health and longevity. Entering the pellet room, Lin Jean realized that there was another world inside as well. Then, he saw an ocean. A pellet sea. This was also the characteristic of the Grand Supreme Elder's pill chamber. It was said that the Grand Supreme Elder did not care about trifles. He would refine pills every day, sometimes 1 furnace, sometimes more than 10. Furthermore, he would refine pills as he pleased and did not follow common sense at all. Other than some of the pills that the big shots of the immortal world would specially collect and place them in a place that he would not forget, he would casually throw the rest of the pills into this pill chamber. Over time, this place became a pellet sea, a pellet sea. No one knew how many pills there were and how many types of pills there were. Even if Old Supreme Lord was reincarnated, he wouldn't be able to tell. Sometimes, when immortals who were on good terms with Old Supreme Lord needed pills, they would bring some fine wine and gift. When Old Supreme Lord was happy, he would allow them to visit the pellet sea. The pellet sea contained almost all types of pills, so no matter who went, they wouldn't return disappointed. In the past, an immortal's status in the world of immortals was judged by whether they had been to Old Supreme Lord's pellet sea. Chapter 768. The Sea of Pills was too shocking. Looking at it, one couldn't even see the end of it. Who knew how many pills Old Lord had refined and stored here? It seemed endless. Lin Jean had no idea what an Empyrean golden pill looked like. If he was alone, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Fortunately, he wasn't alone. Including the colorful butterfly Demonis, many immortals who had seen the Empyrean golden pill before had joined the search party. Controlling their immortal beasts, they began flying around in search. Lin Jean, on the other hand, was much more relaxed. He picked up a pill at random. The pill was round, glowing with a white luster and emitting a rich medicinal fragrance. Although Lin Jean knew how to refine pills, he didn't recognize any of the immortal pills here. Moreover, they weren't pet beasts, so he couldn't rely on the Museum of Deadly Beasts to identify them. Before coming here, Lin Jean had an idea. Since this was Old Lord's pelletization room, he had to take some immortal pills back. After all, any one of them was a priceless treasure. But here he was, looking at the sea of pills, and Lin Jean had no idea what to do. There were too many pills here, and he could take as many as he wanted. This made it difficult for Lin Jean. After all, even if he took a bunch back, he couldn't just eat them without knowing their effect. Also, even if they were immortal pills, they should have a shelf life. Lin Jean figured he should at least store them in a porcelain bottle with the name of the pill on it. It would be best if there was also a pill booklet with detailed descriptions of each pill's effect. This was what Lin Jean had envisioned. Unlike now, all the pills were piled up together like an ocean without any labels or identification system. Lin Jean had no idea where to start. Unless he knew the appearance and characteristics of a specific pill and spent time searching for it, All he could do was grab a handful of pills and run before he was driven mad. This was the only way. Lin Jin put down the white jade pill in his hand and picked up a fiery red pill. Red represented fire. Lin Jin thought that this might be a unique pill with a fire attribute. It should be effective on Xiaohua. But when he picked it up and sniffed it, a pungent smell wafted over. Lin Jin felt dizzy and almost fainted. If it weren't for the sudden boost from the devil blood beast, Lin Jin would have passed out from the impact. Could this be a poisonous pill? Lin Jin looked horrified as he hurriedly tossed the pill away. This possibility was extremely high. What was the Grand Supreme Elder doing? Why didn't he even distinguish the poisonous pill? Wasn't he afraid that the poison in the pill would seep out and contaminate the other pills? One had to know that these were all immortal pills that were worth cities. Sure enough, having a high cultivation level makes one capricious. Lin Jin mumbled to himself. With so many pills in front of him, he was no longer in a hurry. The sea of pills wasn't going anywhere, so Lin Jin wasn't in a hurry to retrieve them. His top priority now was to find the celestial golden pill. That was the most important thing. Lin Jin didn't have to use the heaven and earth furnace, but the celestial golden pill was a must. The butterfly demoness and the other immortals were still searching around. Previously, Lin Jin felt that finding the celestial golden pill would be like searching for a needle in a haystack if he was alone. But now, it seemed like even with help, the difficulty was about the same. After all, there weren't many celestial golden pills, and they were all mixed up in the sea of pills. If there were more pills that looked similar in appearance, finding the celestial golden pill would be even more difficult. It's all right. I have plenty of time now. Lin Jin comforted himself. If push came to shove, there were other places where he could find the celestial golden pill. However, Lin Jin knew that this place must have it too. It was just a matter of finding it. As time passed, no one brought back any good news. The expressions on the faces of all the people who were searching for pills changed from the relaxed expressions at the beginning to the current solemn expressions, and even expressions of disbelief. How is this possible? Why can't we find it? Could it be that there isn't a single celestial golden pill in the entire sea of pills? That's impossible. Although the celestial golden pill is rare, what is this place? This is the Grand Supreme Elder's Sea of Pills, and the celestial golden pill was refined by the Grand Supreme Elder. How could there not be one? Keep looking. They did find a bunch of pills that could extend an immortal's lifespan, but the celestial golden pill was nowhere to be found. During this time, Lin Jin had collected quite a number of pills, including the longevity pill. There were pills of various qualities ranging from 10 to 100 to 500 years of life. Any one of these pills would be priceless treasures in any of Middle Earth's continents. But here, Lin Jin managed to find more than 100 of them. Other than that, Lin Jin had also found some other pills. They had all been screened and Lin Jin was cautious, afraid that he would pick up a poisonous pill and treat it as a treasure. However, even poisonous pills had their uses. It was just that Lin Jin couldn't use them right now. I found it. At this moment, an immortal shouted out with a tone of excitement. How could he not be excited? He had been searching for several hours and now that he had finally found one, of course he was happy. Upon hearing this, Lin Jin perked up and hurried over. The others followed suit. But just then, a loud rumble came from the bottom of the pellet ocean. A green object rushed out and swallowed the celestial golden pill along with hundreds of other pills around it. Everyone was dumbfounded, their mouths agape. Lin Jin reacted the quickest. After it. As soon as he said that, the 100-beast monster that had been following behind Lin Jin was the first to rush over. It was extremely fast, but the green object wasn't slow either. It dived into the sea of pills like a fish in the ocean, disappearing without a trace. The reason why it was described as a fish returning to the sea was because the green thing just now was indeed a fish, a big fish. Lin Jin's fingers were trembling in anger. It wasn't easy finding a celestial golden pill, but it was snatched away halfway. No one would be able to tolerate this, especially since this was of utmost importance to Lin Jin. Without the celestial golden pill, Xiaohu wouldn't be able to advance to rank 8, so he had to get his hands on this. Come out! Lin Jin bellowed. Then, the breeze sword flew out from his waist and pierced into the sea of pills. Everyone outside fell silent. After all, even if the other immortals wanted to help, they couldn't. They didn't know what that green fish was, but it treated the pill sea as a real ocean. When it leaped out of the sea earlier, it was as if it was in the ocean. It was so fast that no one could react in time. After a moment of silence, the sea of pills surged and the sky changed color. Then, a sharp blade flew back into the scabbard at Lin Jin's waist. Chapter 769. It was killed. Lin Jin stared at the breeze monster sword that had flown back. For a moment, he had no idea what had happened. But since there was no smell of blood on the blade, it must have failed. That large green fish was obviously extremely cunning and familiar with the terrain, so it managed to escape. The other immortals gathered around as well. Mr. Lin, we can't find any Sky Luo golden pills in this pill ocean. The only one we found was eaten by that strange fish, the immortal said dejectedly. He had wanted to use this opportunity to prove himself, but he couldn't even find a single pill. It's not just the Sky Luo golden pills. Although there are countless pills here, there's no sign of any supreme-grade pills. In other words, the other supreme-grade pills might have been eaten by that strange fish, another immortal who was more observant said. Lin Jin had taken a closer look earlier. That large green fish had indeed come for the Sky Luo golden pills. Hence, since there were no other Sky Luo golden pills here, it was possible that the fish had swallowed them all. What should he do now? Although the pills here were as boundless as the ocean, the Sky Luo golden pill that Lin Jin needed the most couldn't be found. Should he just give up and search elsewhere? But he might not be able to find it elsewhere. Lin Jin couldn't decide what to do. At this point, the value of the other immortals became apparent. Some of them were old monsters who had lived for thousands of years and were extremely knowledgeable. They stepped forward and suggested that they might know the origin of this large green fish. It was said that after Old Lord accumulated pills for tens of thousands of years, the Sea of Pills gave birth to a pill spirit. Some also said that Old Lord caught this strange fish from the chaotic border, and that it fed on pills. And because it had eaten too many immortal pills, the medicinal effects had seeped into its bones and blood. Its flesh and bones were just like immortal pills, able to unleash great effects. Simply put, they should catch that large green fish first. Lin Jin planned to do just that. Moreover, there might be other Sky Luo golden pills in this pill ocean. Why not continue searching? Whether they found the fish or the pills, it didn't matter. They had the advantage in numbers, so this shouldn't be too difficult. At Lin Jin's command, the immortals immediately controlled their pet beasts to search around. Lin Jin let Xiaohu out to search on his own. If he found the Tianluo golden elixir, he would swallow it directly. If he found the big green fish, it would be fine if the other party surrendered. If not, he would swallow it directly. Xiaohua's characteristics were different. Even if there were toxins, it wouldn't be afraid. That black carp had just swallowed the Tianluo golden elixir, so there would definitely be residual medicinal effects. If Xiaohua swallowed it, it would be equivalent to eating a Tianluo golden elixir. For a moment, the inside of the Dan Sea was in a mess. It could be said to be an overturning of rivers and seas. Countless pills were lifted up and then fell back down. It was as if a poor thief had entered a rich household. At this moment, the immortals in front of them suddenly shuddered, as though they had seen something unbelievable. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The other immortals were curious. What did you see? Why do you all have such an expression? The immortal who had spoken laughed as he walked over. In the end, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. His smile froze on his face, and he, too, was rendered speechless. It was fine if it was just one immortal, but all of them had the same expression. Clearly, what they saw was too shocking. Otherwise, these old monsters who had lived for thousands of years wouldn't be so scared. Lin Jin teleported over as well. Then, he saw a rock in a corner of the pellet sea. It looked like a reef in the sea. And on this rock sat an old man. He looked ordinary and wore a straw hat. He sat cross-legged and held a fishing rod in his hand. He was fishing. While it was a strange scene, it wasn't enough to scare the immortals this much. This old man was clearly not as simple as he seemed. The problem lay with him. Look again. The old man looked ordinary, and there was no trace of immortal aura on him. In other words, he was immortal. This was strange. In the Nine-Heaven realm, there was actually an old mortal man fishing above the Dan Sea in Old Lord's pellet room. This was indeed a strange scene. But no matter how strange it wasn't enough to scare the immortals into silence. After a moment's thought, Lin Jin ignored the others and rode his cloud over. Xiaohu followed beside him, also staring at the old man. If the old man made a move, Xiaohu would react immediately. After getting closer, Lin Jin observed carefully. But the old man didn't even lift his head. Instead, he gestured for Lin Jin to keep quiet. Shoo! The fish is taking the bait. The old man's voice was extremely soft. Speaking of which, it was strange that Lin Jin subconsciously became cautious, afraid of startling the fish. Of course, Lin Jin wasn't being controlled by some evil spell. He just had a vague guess at the old man's identity. Lin Jin looked at the old man's fishing rod. It looked like an ordinary bamboo rod, but there was a unique aura emanating from it. It was clearly an immortal's artifact. Apart from that, the old man's bottom was also covered in unusual material. His clothes and the straw hat he was wearing were also extraordinary. It could be said that other than the fact that this old man was immortal, none of the items he was using were ordinary. Moreover, how could he be a commoner if he could fish here? Lin Jin walked over and sat down, watching quietly. The other immortals didn't dare to move. This old man clearly held a high position in their eyes. Their cautiousness was ingrained in their bones. Lin Jin, on the other hand, wasn't the least bit reserved even after guessing the old man's identity. At most, he was just curious. And so, the scene instantly fell silent. With so many people watching the old man fish, no one dared to move. They didn't even dare to make a sound. After a moment of silence, there seemed to be some movement under the sea. It was as if something was swimming underneath, swirling around the spot where the old man's fishing rod landed. It was as if a large fish was testing the bait. The old man's eyes glinted with excitement as he tightened his grip on the fishing rod. In the next moment, the fishing line suddenly tightened, and the fishing rod was also pulled downwards like a bow. It's taken the bait. The old man laughed heartily and began pulling forcefully. The next instant, a large black fish was forcefully pulled out of the sea. Lin Jin glanced over. Wasn't this the large black fish that swallowed the Sky Luo golden pill? The old man had caught it. Lin Jin was dumbfounded. What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and help. Lin Jin snapped out of his daze at the old man's shout. The group of immortals reacted even faster than Lin Jin as they hurried over to help. The old man then pulled forcefully and the mackerel was pulled over. Then, as if by magic, it shrunk to the size of an average mackerel and landed in a bucket beside the old man. Lin Jin looked at Lin Jin with a look of disbelief. There was water in the bucket and the black fish was swimming inside. It was hard to imagine that this palm-sized thing was actually the 10-meter-long black fish from before. Now that the old man had caught a large black fish, Lin Jin got up and bowed respectfully. Greetings, old lord, the common man Lin Jin. Chapter 770. There weren't many people in this world who could make Lin Jin bow to them in such a respectful manner, but old lord was definitely one of them. Ever since Lin Jin was studying, he had treated Old Lord as his idol. Also, among the immortals, the old man was highly regarded as a highly respected elder. This was why Lin Jin was so respectful. Had it been any other immortal with a history of evil, Lin Jin wouldn't have bothered with them no matter how old they were. Old Lord laughed heartily and sized Lin Jin up before nodding. What a good mortal! Haha, I'm also a mortal. Even if I'm much older than you, I can't compare to a junior like you. As he spoke, he glanced at Xiaohuo with a look of admiration. Then, he turned to the immortals with their various pet beasts and nodded as well. Not bad, not bad. It's not bad that you're willing to let go of your immortal cultivation. You're much better than some stubborn people. This old man was obviously the most experienced immortal cultivator and might even be the ancestor of immortals, Old Lord. He had also become immortal. However, he didn't walk the path of a fragmented immortal. He must have used some other method, but outsiders didn't know about it. As Lin Jin and Old Lord conversed, the other immortals were nervous and reserved. They couldn't help it. Old Lord's status was too high, especially to these immortals. Old Lord's status was even higher than that of an immortal emperor. Even after such a long time, they still felt nervous whenever they saw Old Lord. Don't be so reserved. We're all mortals now and there are no longer the immortal rules of the past, Old Lord said. At this moment, the Grand Supreme Elder said, furthermore, in the past 2,000 years, you are the first batch of people to come here. I am very satisfied to be able to accompany me and talk. Although that was what he said, it was obvious that everyone was so respectful and even in awe of him. The Grand Supreme Elder also enjoyed it very much. It was probably as he had said, no one had spoken to him for 2,000 years, and he did not have a group of followers like in the past. It was indeed lonely. Although Old Lord had become immortal, he still had his discerning eyes. From his observation of the warehouse supervisor, judge, and other immortals, he could tell that these immortals were using a forceful method to destroy their immortal cultivation. But doing so was too dangerous, and there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would be seeking his own death. Even if he lost his cultivation, he wouldn't be able to keep his life. The old Supreme Elder was very clear about this because he had studied this for a long time. However, these people were not dead. Not only did they not die, but there seemed to be a special power strengthening their bodies. At first, the Old Lord could not understand, but when he saw the immortal beasts beside these people, he seemed to understand. Your method is quite amazing. To think that you can borrow the immortal beast's power to enhance yourself. Using external support like this is a brilliant technique, especially in a situation like this. Elderly Lord stroked his beard before turning to Lin Jin. Little friend, if I'm not wrong, this method of controlling immortal beasts came from you, right? Lin Jin nodded. There was no need to hide this. At this, Old Lord continued, actually, when the immortal emperor stirred up trouble, I already knew that the path of immortals was in danger. However, I thought that after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, the path of immortals would at least be able to protect itself. I thought it would just be a change of dynasties at most, but I didn't expect things to turn out this way. The immortal devouring beast evolved from the heavenly path's cornerstone was indeed powerful. Even the immortal emperor couldn't withstand it and was defeated. Recalling the past, Old Lord looked up at the sky in silence. No one spoke. Other than Lin Jin, everyone here had experienced that revolution. It could be said that to the path of immortals, it was the end of the world, a calamity. At that time, I held back my cultivation and wanted to resist for a while to give the other juniors a chance to escape. However, the immortal devouring beast was too powerful. Even if I tried my best, I could only resist for half a day. The Old Lord's face was filled with shame and helplessness. However, Lin Jin and the other immortals were shocked to hear this. They had all witnessed the immortal devouring beast's strength. It was so powerful that even a true immortal wouldn't be able to withstand it and would be killed instantly. Even the immortal emperor died in its hands, but Old Lord was able to hold it off for half a day. What was there to be ashamed of? That was something to be proud of. It could be said that Old Lord was the ceiling of immortals, an existence that stood at the peak of all immortals. Immortal Emperor. Probably not as good as Old Lord. What happened after that? Lin Jin was curious, and so were the other immortals. The Grand Supreme Elder smiled. In the end, I was naturally defeated. However, I've cultivated for a long time after all, and I've lived a few years longer than others, so I have some special methods to protect myself. However, it's impossible for me to compete with that immortal devouring beast again. After a pause, Old Lord sighed. Later on, I found out that the immortal devouring beast was targeting the immortal's aura. So, I used an immortal vanquishing pill to destroy my own immortal's aura. This was said casually, but one could imagine that Old Lord wouldn't have made up his mind so easily back then. Others couldn't bear to give up their hundreds or thousands of years of cultivation, so how could Old Lord give up his hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation so easily? Definitely not. But Old Lord could see the situation. If he didn't give up his cultivation, the immortal devouring beast would definitely track him down. Moreover, he was already injured in the previous battle, damaging his immortal foundation. He couldn't possibly compete with the immortal devouring beast anymore. Hence, Old Lord's decisiveness back then was out of helplessness. After destroying the immortal's aura, I'll stay in this pill ocean and think of a way to break it. Old Lord glanced at the black carp in his bucket. I've been meditating for 100 years. I thought that if immortals can't be tolerated in this world, they should be replaced by beasts. That's why I created this big fish. After Old Lord said this, it was Lin Jin's turn to be shocked. This big black carp was actually Old Lord's creation. If that was the case, this black carp definitely wasn't as simple as it seemed. Lin Jin immediately bowed at Old Lord. Old Lord, can I touch this black carp? Old Lord smiled and gestured for Lin Jin to do as he pleased. Lin Jin immediately reached his hand into the water. The next instant, Lin Jin felt as if his hand had reached into a vast ocean, almost dragging him into it. This bucket was clearly not as simple as it seemed. Fortunately, Lin Jin was no ordinary person. He couldn't extend his arms, but he had silver needles that could be used as extensions. Thus, a silver needle shot out like a bolt of lightning. It traveled thousands of feet into the sea and finally came into contact with the large green fish. In an instant, the Museum of Deadly Beasts displayed the evaluation results of this large green carp. Lin Jin was shocked by what he saw. A rank 8 immortal beast. This black carp was actually a rank 8 immortal beast. This was something Lin Jin didn't expect. Chapter 771. A rank 8 immortal beast was equivalent to a carefree immortal. If the green carp had been hostile and tried to attack him, he might have died without even knowing how. It was no wonder that the Qingfeng demon sword's pursuit was fruitless. It was because the cultivation of this big green carp was much higher than his. Lin Jin felt a lingering fear. Now, it seemed like the green carp was a glutton at best, but it was actually quite gentle. It wasn't a tyrannical and wild immortal beast. The other immortals obviously didn't know how powerful the green carp was, so they didn't feel the same way Lin Jin did. Instead, Old Lord noticed the change in Lin Jin's expression and seemed to have thought of something. Young friend Lin, was what you used just now a beast appraisal technique? Because Lin Jin had told Old Lord about beast appraisals before, the old man asked. Lin Jin nodded. Old Lord then asked about the green carp. Old Lord had never mentioned this before, but Lin Jin answered him fluently. This piqued Old Lord's interest. Young friend Lin, your beast evaluation skills are truly amazing. Would you mind teaching me? Old Lord's words made the immortals' hearts pound. This was the founder of immortality, and he was asking Mr. Lin for guidance? Unbelievable. This was simply unbelievable. However, this also proved that Mr. Lin was indeed extraordinary. They didn't follow the wrong person. Lin Jin had purposely answered fluently because he wanted Old Lord to say this. This way, he could bargain with him. Lin Jin didn't say anything but summoned Xiaohua for Old Lord to take a closer look. Old Lord, please take a look at this pet beast of mine, Lin Jin said. Xiaohua walked over obediently. The Old Lord had been curious about this firewolf for a long time now. Now, he was carefully inspecting it and marveling at it. He was originally a normal person, but he was able to reach true celestial realm. This is just like touching stone to gold. Little friend Lin, your pet beast is really amazing. Old Lord praised. Lin Jin smiled. To tell you the truth, Old Lord, the reason I've come to the Nine Heavens world and even disturbed Old Lord's cultivation is to find an evolution method for my pet beast. I have the method, but I lack the support of precious resources. Having said that, Lin Jin glanced at the gigantic mackerel that was swimming happily. The Old Lord was smart. He had been observing Lin Jin and the others for a long time and knew that they were looking for the Sky Luo golden pill. He laughed and handed a porcelain bottle to Lin Jin. There are 5 Tianluo golden pills inside. If you don't have enough, you can ask me for more. You won't be able to find it in the pill sea. My black carp likes to eat this kind of pill the most. The Grand Supreme Elder was indeed generous. He gave 5 pills at once. It should be noted that this was the Empyrean Golden Pill. Even during the golden age of the immortal Tao, it was a priceless treasure. After all, a single Empyrean Golden Pill could allow one to become a carefree immortal. Lin Jin quickly took it. Lin Jin had to accept this item. It would be a waste if he didn't accept it. After all, Lin Jin was here for the celestial golden pills. He thought he would have to go through a lot of hardships to get his hands on them so quickly, and 5 at once. He earned it. Lin Jin deliberately glanced at the now extinguished celestial furnace outside and said, Old Lord, I actually have an evolution method for your big green carp. Would you like to hear it? Old Lord, I actually have an evolution method. Would you like to hear it? Old Lord's breathing quickened. Despite having lived for hundreds of thousands of years and having seen too much, he still couldn't help but be tempted. The reason was simple. This mackerel that he had spent 2,000 years cultivating could now be compared to a carefree immortal. However, carefree immortals weren't enough. If he wanted to defeat that immortal devouring beast, he had to raise this mackerel to another level. But this was too difficult. Old Lord was the ancestor of immortals. If he wanted to create an immortal, one immortal pill could do it. There was almost nothing in this world that could stop him. However, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to make the big green carp improve even a little. All these years, the Grand Supreme Elder had given the big green carp countless top-grade immortal pills, but the effect was minimal. More importantly, the Grand Supreme Elder realized that he had no clue at all. For this reason, he was also racking his brains. Now, Lin Jin actually said that he had a method to help the mackerel evolve. This naturally shocked and excited Old Lord. If the mackerel could advance a level, Old Lord was sure that even if it went up against that immortal devouring beast, his mackerel wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Even if it couldn't win, it wouldn't be defeated. Sometimes, Old Lord was just like Lin Jin, seeking peace of mind. Although he didn't have to worry about his lifespan after becoming immortal, he had countless pills that could extend his life. Otherwise, how could a mortal like him survive for so long? However, the old Supreme Elder did not dare to run around because the immortal swallowing beast was like a sharp sword hanging above his head. Only by obtaining the power of the immortal swallowing beast would he be able to fight against it. Only then would the old Supreme Elder be at ease and be able to sleep soundly. Hence, Old Lord was tempted. He wasn't a fool. Lin Jin's motive for looking at the furnace earlier was self-evident. He probably wanted to use the furnace to help his firewolf evolve. If the furnace was still burning, Other immortals could activate it with immortal talismans. However, the furnace had been extinguished for 1,000 years. It could be said that other than Old Lord himself, no one could reactivate the furnace. Although this matter was a little difficult for the current Old Supreme Elder, this deal could be done and had to be done. Young friend Lin, I'll help you light up the furnace and refine your pet beast. Tell me the mackerel's evolution method, Old Lord said seriously. Lin Jin nodded. Old Lord didn't ask if the method was real or fake. To him, it shouldn't be fake. Lin Jin was indeed capable. Even if it was fake, Old Lord would admit it and not pursue the matter. Because the mackerel would probably have to rely on Lin Jin for her evolution. They got up and rode a cloud outside. Before them was the massive furnace. Old Lord's robes fluttered and his beard swayed. He took out an immortal talisman, cut his finger, and softly chanted, "Go!" Then, Old Lord tossed the immortal talisman out. The talisman instantly transformed into the shape of a large bell. Dong! The melodious sound of the bell rang. The next instant, countless fireballs came flying from all directions. Lin Jin's eyes widened. Upon closer inspection, those weren't fireballs. They were all golden crows. Golden crows were rare immortal beasts. They were born with blazing suns. It was said that this blazing sun in the sky was a manifestation of the ancient golden crow. Flames as hot as the sun. This was the golden crow's supernatural power. At that moment, the countless golden crows flew over and rushed into the furnace. In an instant, the cold and dark furnace burst into flames and was reactivated. At the same time, a wave of heat washed over them. It was a spectacular sight. It was as if a dead star had suddenly been lit up. Lin Jin gaped at the sight, unable to say a word. Chapter 772. Little friend Lin, hurry up with whatever you want to concoct. The reactivation of this heaven and earth pill furnace might trigger some unpredictable event. You'd better hurry up. Otherwise, I'm afraid something might happen if you delay. The Old Lord said solemnly. Lin Jin had no idea what Old Lord meant by things might go awry, but judging from Old Lord's expression, he didn't seem to be joking. Lin Jin immediately reacted, and quickly fed an Empyrean golden pill to Xiaohua before instructing him to rush into the furnace. Lin Jin had already buried the purple thunder divine needle inside Xiaohua's body. Once Xiaohua was inside the heaven and earth furnace, Lin Jin would have to perform his trick inside. With the help of the celestial golden pill and the heaven and earth furnace, Xiaohua's advancement to rank 8 was almost certain. Xiaohua was excited too. He transformed into a ball of flame and dove into the furnace. Lin Jin closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged, beginning the spirit-casting needle. Lin Jin had already gathered all the prerequisites for Xiaohua's evolution method given by the pet beast. Now that he had the assistance of the heaven and earth furnace, he was confident he could succeed this time. It was a spectacular scene. The heaven and earth furnace was operating at full force as if a blazing sun was right before them, emitting a blinding brilliance and heat. The surrounding clouds began to recede, rolling away like waves in a sea of clouds. The immortals who came with Lin Jin felt the unbearable heat and could only use their pet beasts to withstand it. If they couldn't, they could only retreat. By now, they had retreated 1,000 feet away and were still retreating. Only Lin Jin and Old Lord remained calm. Even though they were all mortals, the difference in strength was like night and day. Lin Jin was finally able to divert his attention. He was curious about what Old Lord meant by something bad might happen, so he couldn't resist asking. Just as Old Lord was about to speak, he suddenly saw a massive dark cloud drifting toward them. In a breath's time, it was about to reach them. "That's what you wanted to ask." Old Lord's expression was solemn, as if a great enemy had arrived. Lin Jin studied the rolling darkness and saw a figure standing among the dark clouds. This person was dressed in black robes and had an evil glint in his eyes. His aura was eerie. This wasn't human, nor was it a monster, nor was it an immortal. It looked familiar. Lin Jin turned to look at Old Lord, then at that thing. Both of them looked exactly the same. Clearly, there was a story behind this. However, this wasn't the time to ask questions. The Old Lord had already rushed towards the heaven and earth pill furnace. "Don't let him enter the furnace," Old Lord shouted. Even without his reminder, Lin Jin knew that he couldn't let the man enter the furnace. No one was allowed. Now was the crucial time for Xiao Hua to advance to the 8th level, so how could he allow anyone to disturb him? Lin Jin would fight anyone who dared to cause trouble. With a thought, the 100 Beasts monster charged forward like a bolt of lightning, blocking the black-robed old man. The 100 Beasts monster was the strongest of the 6th level. In other words, it was the strongest of the pseudo-immortals. Even if it were to go up against a true immortal-level expert, it would still be able to put up a fight. In fact, it might even be able to do so without fear. However, against the black-robed Old Lord, it only took a moment for him to retreat. Clearly, the black-robed old man was very powerful. Fortunately, Lin Jin had more tricks up his sleeves. The clear wind demon's sword also flew over with a wave of sword chi, cooperating with the 100 beasts to fight against the black-robed Elder Supreme Lord. To be on the safe side, Lin Jin even released his ghostly blood beast clone, bringing the spirit-devouring ghost bug along with it. With this, it was now a 3-on-1 battle. Old Lord wasn't idle either. He took out a chess piece from his pocket. The word army was written on it. Go! Old Lord casually tossed the army chess piece out. With a golden flash in midair, the army landed on the ground in the form of a 9-foot-tall soldier clad in golden armor and wielding a long sword. This soldier was similar to casting beans into soldiers. It was a manifestation of a spell. Despite being a golden-armored soldier, it wasn't weak at all. From what Lin Jin could see, it was definitely stronger than most hollow immortals. Now it was 4 against 1. This was a balance. Lin Jin could tell that the black-robed Elder Supreme Lord wasn't that strong, so he calmed down a little. However, since the man looked so similar to Old Lord, there must be something going on. Old Lord, this is? Lin Jin suddenly asked. Back then, when I was refining pellets, I accidentally got distracted and ruined a cauldron of pills. After thinking about it for 7 days, I realized that I was affected by an inner demon, so I forced it out and killed it. To think that this inner demon, despite its mediocre cultivation level, was immortal. Even I couldn't kill it. Hence, after every pellet refinement session, this inner demon would come and cause trouble out of resentment. This time, the furnace hasn't been opened for more than 1,000 years, so I thought it wouldn't come again. After a pause, he added, "But young friend Lin, don't take it to heart. It's just a small problem. In the past, I could crush it with one finger." Lin Jin was even more concerned after hearing his words. "What about now?" "Now?" Old Lord was stunned before replying, "Of course not now. I'm just a mortal now. Although I still have some tricks up my sleeves, I can't do anything to it anymore. To be honest, I'm surprised that this immortal devouring beast hasn't devoured it yet. It's inexplicable." Lin Jin understood now. The reason why Old Lord hadn't opened the furnace for nearly 2,000 years and even put out the fire was because of this. Although Old Lord didn't seem to feel guilty and behaved normally, why did Lin Jin feel like he had been tricked by Old Lord? Inexplicable? The immortal devouring beast wanted to kill immortals. This inner demon wasn't an immortal, so the beast obviously wouldn't pay attention to it. Also, when Old Lord was still an immortal, his cultivation level was definitely no weaker than an immortal emperor. If even he couldn't kill this inner demon, it must have reached the pinnacle of the term immortal body. To put it more bluntly, when the Grand Supreme Elder's cultivation was extremely high, he could not do anything to his inner demon. He could only cut it off, drive it away, and kill it again and again. However, the inner demon came back again and again, and there was nothing he could do. Now that the Grand Supreme Elder had become immortal, he could not do anything to his inner demon. It was no wonder Old Lord said that things might change if he delayed. But even if he was tricked by Old Lord, Lin Jin would accept it. Moreover, he couldn't retreat now, nor could he back down. Xiaohua was at a critical juncture. Forget one inner demon, even if there were 100, Lin Jin wouldn't hold back. Since I can't kill it, I won't kill it. Let's freeze it for now. With a plan in mind, Lin Jin flipped his hand and took out the demon slayer from the museum. This weapon was rarely used. It had been used to slay a few obsession demons before being used to seal zombies who had turned into demons in the painting realm. It could be said that this weapon was specially used to deal with grindheads. Old Lord's inner demon was powerful, and he had an immortal body. However, Lin Jin had no intention of killing him. Just as he said, he would freeze it for now and wait for Xiaohua to finish his evolution. Chapter 773. With the demon slayer in hand, Lin Jin waited for the right moment and tossed it out. Beside him, Old Lord could tell what Lin Jin was planning. With his keen eyes, Old Lord noticed the uniqueness of Lin Jin's demon slayer, so he handed Lin Jin a sword amulet to assist him in casting the spell. Without hesitation, Lin Jin took the sword amulet and infused it with mana. In an instant, Lin Jin felt a telepathic connection between him and the demon slayer. It was a wonderful feeling. With a flick of his finger, the demon slayer's speed increased by several times. Almost instantaneously, it pierced through the void, and while Old Lord's inner demon was unprepared, it pierced through his chest and nailed him to the wall of the furnace. The scorching flames instantly engulfed the inner demon. However, the heart demon had an undying body, so no matter how the flames burned, they were unable to burn it to ashes. However, the heart demon could not escape either. After being pierced by the demon's slaying sword, it was unable to move at all. It could only be continuously burned by the flames and reborn, suffering endless pain. It let out a heart-wrenching scream, but Lin Jin and Old Lord only smiled at each other. "Friend Lin, this sword is interesting. It's not an immortal sword, and it doesn't have the sharpness to slash through heaven and earth. Yet, it can suppress demons. How interesting. Can you lend it to me for research some other day?" Old Lord had probably never seen such a treasure before, so he wanted to study it. Lin Jin nodded. This wasn't a big deal. If Xiaohua really managed to evolve to rank 8, borrowing a sword would be a piece of cake. Of course, Old Lord didn't just want to borrow it for research. He probably wanted to use this sword to see if it could completely eradicate that undying inner demon of his. Right now, the demon-slaying sword had already immobilized the Grand Supreme Elder's inner demon and caused it to be repeatedly burned by the flames on the cauldron of heaven and earth. Perhaps the inner demon would perish today. After that, Lin Jin and Old Lord chatted merrily for quite a while. Lin Jin also told him a little about blood contract. Old Lord was a formidable figure. With just a few words from Lin Jin, Old Lord was already familiar with the art of blood contracts. He even used a special method to perfect it before putting it into practice. The Old Lord directly used the blood contract technique and successfully formed a blood contract with the big green fish. Then, he made a hand seal and a green light flew out. The big green fish actually became huge in the air. Its body was more than 10,000 feet long, and it could swim in the sky without water. It was only at this moment that it displayed the might of a rank 8 immortal beast. The Grand Supreme Elder had a lot of fun learning the blood pact technique. Furthermore, he learned the technique to enhance himself through the power of the blood pact very quickly. Ordinary people would need at least a few months to understand the key points and familiarize themselves with it. However, the Grand Supreme Elder had completed it in the blink of an eye. Not only that, but the Grand Supreme Elder also changed his hand seal and chanted, "Black carp transforms into a dragon." In the next moment, azure light surged on the body of the huge green fish, and its body continued to grow. Sharp claws grew out of its head, and in the blink of an eye, the huge green fish had turned into an azure dragon that was over 1,000 feet long. "Ha, interesting, interesting. Let's do another lawful embodiment of heaven and earth." The Grand Supreme Elder was like a child who had just found a new toy. His eyes lit up as he raised his hand and pointed. What happened next made Lin Jin's scalp tingle. The green dragon was already huge enough, but after the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, the green dragon's body grew 10 times larger. Anyway, it was indescribable with words because Lin Jin could no longer see the green dragon's full form. At this moment, Lin Jin felt like he was looking at a rank 9 immortal devouring beast. Although Old Lord's green dragon was still slightly inferior to a rank 9 immortal devouring beast, it was very close. A rank 8 immortal beast was truly impressive. In particular, Old Lord's spells were superb. Although he wasn't an immortal and couldn't cast various top-notch spells, he could use them through the blood contract technique and this pet beast. In other words, this was no different from when Old Lord was an immortal. It was no wonder that Old Lord was having so much fun that he couldn't stop. Hee, let's swallow the moon. Old Lord was relentless. The huge green dragon's unbelievably huge body began to ascend. It opened its mouth and swallowed a star from the 9 heavens. He really swallowed it. Then, the green dragon swam into the void, shuttling between different planets. The scene was thrilling and Lin Jin's mouth was wide open, unable to say a word. As for the other immortals, they weren't much stronger than Lin Jin. They were also hiding in the distance, shuddering in fear. They had more to consider. For example, what if this thing caused some trouble? Or what if the immortal devouring beast was alarmed? That would be bad. However, some of them mused that Old Lord's green dragon might already have the ability to compete with the immortal devouring beast. If they could get rid of the immortal devouring beast, the path of immortality might be revived. At this thought, they couldn't help but feel excited. Their eyes were filled with the color of a chessboard. Lin Jin had thought of this as well. Lightning enchantment. Old Lord continued to cast an advanced immortal spell. Streaks of green lightning surged from the green dragon's body, as if he was wearing a layer of lightning armor. His aura was now at its peak. Stop! Lin Jin immediately stopped him. Old Lord was stunned. Noticing Lin Jin's serious expression, he seemed to have thought of something. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Come back." The next instant all the spells vanished. The green dragon turned back into a small green fish, and swam back into the bucket. It then swam around happily as if nothing had happened. Old Lord stared at Lin Jin and Lin Jin didn't back down. Both of them stared at each other. "Old Lord, are you thinking of competing with that immortal devouring beast?" Lin Jin asked, revealing Old Lord's thoughts. Old Lord nodded. "That's what I'm thinking." "Why? Do you think it's impossible?" Lin Jin nodded. "That's right, but it's impossible." Old Lord was a little angry. Just now, he had indeed been deducing and comprehending, perfectly learning and even improving the blood pact method. Moreover, he could use the blood pact method to use all sorts of immortal Tao spells and divine abilities that only he could use in the past. Now that he was using the green dragon, he was even more powerful because the immortal beast's disciples were far stronger than humans. Old Lord felt that if the immortal devouring beast was lured out, he would fight it out. He had been suppressing this rage for 2,000 years. Before this, he could only hide here due to his lack of ability. Now that his strength had improved, Old Lord obviously didn't want to continue pretending that nothing had happened. He wanted revenge. Most of Old Lord's disciples and successors had died under the immortal devouring beast's hands. How could he let this go? Hence, he was a little angry at Lin Jin for stopping him. Angry at Lin Jin. Lin Jin wasn't afraid of Old Lord's anger at all. Instead, he said bluntly, "If Old Lord wants to compete with the immortal devouring beast now, you'll still lose." Moreover, if you anger the immortal devouring beast this time, none of us here will be able to escape." Lin Jin wasn't joking. Lin Jin might not be an expert in other areas, but when it came to beasts, Lin Jin had absolute authority on who was stronger and who was weaker. Old Lord felt that his green fish could go up against the immortal devouring beast with the support of various top-grade spells. However, Lin Jin believed that a rank 8 was a rank 8 and a rank 9 was a rank 9. No matter how powerful a rank 8 was, it couldn't defeat a rank 9. It was that simple. Hence, he spoke up to stop Old Lord from giving up on this risky idea. Both of them continued to stare at each other. Lin Jin didn't budge an inch. In the end, it was Old Lord who averted his gaze. Now that he had calmed down, he knew that he was being impulsive earlier. Chapter 774. The Old Lord had lived for more than 100,000 years. Logically speaking, he should be extremely stable in doing things. Since the Great Tribulation of the Immortal Tao, the Old Lord was able to stay here safely and avoid this tribulation. This showed his personality. After all, even immortal emperors had fallen during the Great Tribulation of the Immortal Tao. Hence, if it was the Old Lord in the past, he would never do something so irrational and impulsive. The reason why he did that was because he was immortal now. Without the immortal suppression of desires, he couldn't be as calm as water. Even if he had been suppressing himself for 2,000 years, a mortal was still a mortal. Once one became immortal, their state of mind would change. Like a saint, Old Lord was no exception. Fortunately, he listened to Lin Jin's advice at the last moment and gave up on provoking the beast. After calming down, Old Lord knew that Lin Jin was right. No, he just couldn't. Then, he looked at Lin Jin. Since Lin Jin said no, it meant that Lin Jin knew what to do. It was like a standard. To compete with immortal devouring beasts, there had to be a standard. What was this standard? If he didn't understand, he would ask and Lin Jin would answer. Later on, Old Lord learned about the division of beast realms in the mortal world. He also learned that his green carp was rank 8 while immortal devouring beasts were rank 9. The difference of one rank is like heaven and earth. These were Lin Jin's exact words. Old Lord nodded. Then, he looked at the furnace and asked Lin Jin what rank the firewolf inside could reach if he succeeded. Upon hearing that it was also rank 8, Old Lord sighed. If it was also rank 8, that meant it wasn't enough. It seemed like he still had to wait. But that was fine. Old Lord had an endless supply of longevity pills. He had ways to extend his life until the day of revenge. It didn't matter even if he had to wait another 2,000 years. Let's see who could outlast the other. Seeing that Old Lord had regained his mental state, Lin Jin breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't think too much about it. Old Lord had been hiding here for 2,000 years to nurture the green carp. It was obvious what he wanted to do. It was just that after mastering the blood contract method and gaining a huge boost, Old Lord felt an impulse. Everything was fine now. Unlike Old Lord, Lin Jin didn't evolve into a pet beast to kill the immortal devouring beast. He only wanted to protect himself. It was that simple. Even if Xiaohua ascended to rank 9 in the future, as long as the immortal devouring beast didn't provoke him, Lin Jin wouldn't attack it. This was because Lin Jin knew that the immortal devouring beast was a ferocious beast manifested from the Heavenly Tao Foundation. The Heavenly Tao Foundation was the Heavenly Tao, a law. Challenging the law would never end well. Just like the immortal emperor, wasn't this lesson enough? But in the next moment, the sky changed color. A bestial roar resounded through the 9 heavens. Lin Jin's expression changed instantly while Old Lord's expression froze. The other immortals shuddered in fear. In the endless sea of clouds in the distance, the shadow of a huge beast gradually appeared. In the end, he was still alarmed. Lin Jin felt his scalp go numb as a sense of danger crept over him. Needless to say, Elder Supreme Lord's impulsive actions had alarmed the immortal devouring beast. Now that it was here, no one knew what would happen next. "Don't move," Elder Supreme Lord said with a solemn expression. It was clearly his fault this time. At the same time, Elder Supreme Lord got up slowly, picked up the bucket, and looked at the beast's head that had appeared in the distance. If the beast made any other moves, Elder Supreme Lord would have to transform into a dragon again and fight with his life on the line. The immortal devouring beast's head was massive and only a small part of it was revealed. Only one of its eyes was revealed and it was looking at Elder Supreme Lord, Lin Jin, and the others. The reason why it didn't attack immediately was because the immortal devouring beast hadn't sensed the immortal's aura. However, this kind of confrontation was even more nerve-wracking. The terrifying pressure was indescribable. Everyone, including Lin Jin, dared not breathe too loudly. Even Elder Supreme Lord was sweating profusely. But unlike before, Elder Supreme Lord now had a hint of confidence. His rank 8 green carp could transform into a dragon and gather the power of the 5 elements under the enhancement of a spell. Its combat strength was comparable to when he was at the peak of his immortal cultivation. In fact, it might even be stronger. This was where Elder Supreme Lord's confidence came from. But just as Lin Jin had said, the difference of one rank was like heaven and earth. If they fought now, they would definitely lose. However, Elder Supreme Lord knew that he couldn't hide because he was the one who caused this trouble, so he had to be the one to solve it. If push came to shove, he would have to fight them head-on. After all, he couldn't just sit around and wait for death. Elder Supreme Lord was already prepared to die while the other immortals wore expressions of despair. Under the gaze of the immortal devouring beast, they didn't even have the courage to run. They couldn't resist this kind of pressure at all. As if their bodies were filled with lead, they couldn't even move a finger. The rank 9 beast's aura had already shaken the entire place. This was a one-sided massacre because whenever the immortal devouring beast appeared, it would always be a one-sided massacre. There were no exceptions. It was the same even if it was against a former immortal emperor. Of course, no one wanted to fight the immortal devouring beast right now. They all hoped that the beast would leave on its own, but it seemed unlikely. Because the immortal devouring beast had extended a giant claw from the vast sea of clouds. This claw was huge, and each of its claws was like a pillar supporting the heavens. With a domineering aura, it slowly swiped at the crowd. Everyone was extremely nervous. A battle was about to break out at any moment. Then, Lin Jin calmly took out a talisman and activated it. The talisman turned into a ball of flames and disappeared without a trace. Almost at the same time, the immortal devouring beast shuddered as if it had sensed something. It immediately turned around and flew away, vanishing in the blink of an eye. It actually left. The impossible had actually become possible. What was going on? The immortals were so scared that they broke out in cold sweat and collapsed to the ground. They had been scared out of their wits, and it was a matter of life and death. They couldn't be blamed for this. Elder Supreme Lord let out a long sigh. Putting down the bucket, he turned to Lin Jin. "Young friend Lin, what happened?" He was clearly curious about how Lin Jin used a talisman to make the immortal devouring beast retreat. That was an immortal devouring beast, an existence that could destroy immortals. Why would it obey Lin Jin? If Lin Jin could control this immortal devouring beast, things wouldn't be so complicated. Lin Jin's answer was simple. "I'm a beast appraiser. No matter how powerful a rank 9 immortal devouring beast is, it's still a ferocious beast. Ferocious beasts have their own characteristics, and as long as you can grasp their characteristics, you can use them to your advantage. For example, the immortal devouring beast's primary target is immortals, which is its highest priority. As for mortals like us, as long as we don't provoke it on purpose, it won't attack us." After a pause, Lin Jin continued, "Hence, after I came to the 9 Heavens world, I deliberately set up some talisman traps in some places. I even left some immortal aura in them in case we run into the immortal devouring beast. I can use this to lure it away so we can escape from danger. Chapter 775. Lin Jin looked pleased with himself. His precautionary measures had finally come in handy, and the results were excellent. The situation earlier was dangerous and Lin Jin was afraid too, especially since Xiaohua was at the critical juncture of his advancement to rank 8. He couldn't afford to be disturbed. Fortunately, this move worked. Otherwise, Lin Jin wouldn't know what to do. At this, Old Lord praised Lin Jin profusely. Even though the other immortals were a distance away, they were still impressed by Lin Jin. This man had clearly studied immortal devourer beasts thoroughly and knew their characteristics, so he could make arrangements in advance. If they were in his shoes, they wouldn't have expected this, and they wouldn't know what to do. Even though they were lucky enough to escape, everyone knew that it was only a temporary escape. No matter what the immortal devouring beast was lured away by, it would most likely return. Hence, they had to leave as soon as possible. Old Lord knew this, and so did Lin Jin. All of you leave for now, Lin Jin said decisively to the immortals in the distance. They might be able to deal with ordinary immortal beasts and enemies, but they were useless against an immortal devouring beast. Instead of that, it was better to let them leave first. Upon hearing this, Old Lord looked at Lin Jin with approval. While it wasn't rare to see Old Lord being able to let bystanders leave in the face of danger, not everyone possessed this kind of magnanimity. In particular, some people knew they couldn't leave so they wouldn't let others leave either. Old Lord had seen this kind of overbearing attitude many times before. The immortals were touched. They were so excited that they didn't want to leave, but Lin Jin insisted. They knew that once the immortal devouring beast returned, they wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. Among them, the judge was more agreeable. He said, "That immortal devouring beast is only concerned about this place. It might even just be the heaven and earth pill cauldron." Because just now, the immortal devouring beast was also looking at the heaven and earth pill cauldron. In that case, Mr. Lin, leaving with us is the best plan. The other immortals agreed as well. The magistrate was right, but little did he know that Lin Jin couldn't let go of this opportunity. After this village, it would be difficult to find another opportunity that could guarantee Xiaohua's advancement to rank 8. He might never see it again. Therefore, Lin Jin couldn't leave no matter what, at least not before Xiaohua evolved. Seeing this, the immortals knew that they wouldn't be of any use if they stayed. Instead, they would only add to the chaos. Hence, they bowed to Lin Jin and Old Lord before leaving together. "Old Lord can leave too," Lin Jin said when he saw that the pill furnace no longer needed anyone to control it. The Grand Supreme Elder shook his head. "I was the one who caused the trouble. I won't leave no matter what." Lin Jin had already guessed this outcome, so he stopped trying to persuade her. In fact, staying here was extremely risky because no one knew when the immortal devouring beast would return. Once it did, Lin Jin no longer had a second layer of insurance to lure it away. If that happened, a huge battle might just break out. Xiaohua could not play a role for the time being. There was only the Grand Supreme Elder's 8th Order green fish. Even if the Grand Supreme Elder's spells were superb, it would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot if he fought against the immortal swallowing beast alone. Lin Jin knew this, and so did Old Lord. Time was of the essence. Old Lord cast a few more talismans to hasten the furnace's refinement. He couldn't care less if the furnace was damaged. Lin Jin controlled the purple thunder divine needle to pierce into Xiaohua's acupoints to speed up his evolution. Another hour passed by. By now, the furnace was as bright as the sun. The thick walls of the furnace were burning red and the temperature had reached its limit. Just then, a tremor came from within the furnace. Rumble. The massive furnace shook as well. Lin Jin's eyes lit up. He knew this was a critical moment and he couldn't help much anymore. Hence, with a wave of his hand, a bolt of purple lightning flew over from the furnace and landed in Lin Jin's hand. It was the purple thunder divine needle. At this, Old Lord chuckled. Refined by a true immortal. The aura on it is very familiar. Is it that kid, Miao Yen? Perhaps only Old Lord had the right to call Spiritual Master Miao Yen a kid. Lin Jin nodded. Back when I was at Xian Dao sect as a guest, I asked Spiritual Master Miao Yen to refine it for me. Old Lord nodded. Miao Yan's refining skills are SOSO. I'll refine it for you another day. Lin Jin was overjoyed. Old Lord was a master of both pellet and weapon refinement. If Old Lord could refine the purple thunder divine needle, its power would surely increase by another level. This was a good thing for Lin Jin. Having said that, Old Lord turned to the furnace. That fire wolf of yours should be almost done as well. Lin Jin nodded. Both Lin Jin and Old Lord couldn't help much at this point. Xiaohua had to rely on himself for this final step. Logically speaking, it should be a sure thing, but that was hard to say. Even if it was a sure thing, there was still a chance. Hence, anything could happen before an actual evolution. Just at this moment, the heaven and earth pill furnace shook violently once more. It was as though there was something rampaging within. The heaven and earth pill cauldron also let out a terrifying cracking sound. There was actually a crack in the wall. Flames splashed out from the crack. The furnace was now like a huge bomb, a sun that was about to explode. This is bad. Lin Jin was shocked. Judging by the looks of it, Xiaohua was planning to destroy the furnace. How could he do that? The furnace was an immortal-grade artifact that Old Lord had spent 100,000 years to refine. It would be a waste to destroy it. Moreover, Lin Jin didn't believe that anything in this world could destroy this furnace that was as big as a small planet. Boom. There was another sound, and this time, there were even more cracks on the pill furnace, and the flames had already begun to surge out. Old Lord pulled Lin Jin along and ran. Your pet beast is planning to devour the furnace's flames. Let's run. There'll be a huge explosion, and we'll be caught in it if we're too slow. There was a hint of excitement in Old Lord's voice. He was clearly excited to see this evolution method with his own eyes. Lin Jin's thoughts were different from Old Lord's. It would be bad if Xiaohua destroyed Old Lord's furnace during his evolution. After all, the furnace was a godly item and Old Lord's painstaking effort. Perhaps reading Lin Jin's mind, Old Lord added, "It's just a furnace. We can just refine it after it's destroyed. The rank 8 pet beast is more important." Since Old Lord was so open-minded, Lin Jin couldn't say anything else. He could only retreat with Old Lord. Soon, a third loud bang came from the furnace. From afar, the furnace looked like a sun that was about to explode. It was scorching hot and emitted a blinding light. Lin Jin closed his eyes and sensed the power of their blood contract before letting out a long sigh. The next instant, the furnace exploded, sending flames hundreds of miles away. The entire Nine Heavens world was shaken. Chapter 776. The explosion of the Heaven and Earth Pill Furnace was comparable to a massive nuclear explosion on an island. All immortal beasts in the Nine Heavens world were so frightened that they scurried away. Birds and beasts took flight. Even in the faraway immortal prison, the originally dark environment was now illuminated by the light coming from the cracks in the corridor. What happened? Such a huge commotion. Could it be an immortal devouring beast? The immortals who didn't choose to leave the immortal prison were terrified. However, no matter how curious they were, they didn't dare to go out and take a look. Although the judge and the others who were persuaded to leave by Old Lord and Lin Jin were already several hundred miles away, the explosion still sent them tumbling. The scorching flames set their hair and clothes on fire. Fortunately, they were far enough away so it was only slightly troublesome but not serious injuries. Getting up from the ground, they quickly hid under a boulder. What a terrifying force! The old warden lay on the ground, panting heavily. His immortal pet beast was protecting him, but even so, the scorching heat still made him feel uncomfortable. It must be Lin's pet beast. It's so scary. This aura is even stronger than Old Lord's azure dragon. Lin is immortal, but his pet beast has already reached the level of a carefree immortal. That's amazing. But this commotion is too huge. Could the heaven and earth pill furnace have exploded? One of the immortals guessed. Someone else immediately refuted him in disbelief. The heaven and earth pill furnace is a divine artifact. Old Lord spent tens of thousands of years refining it. Nothing in this world can damage it, one of the immortals said with widened eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, a fireball came crashing down from the sky and smashed 3,000 meters away from them. The force and fluctuations of the impact caused them to tumble once more. If it weren't for the boulders and immortal beasts blocking the impact for them, more than half of them would have been killed by the impact. What's that? Something fell down. Let's go take a look. Be careful. The group waited for a moment before approaching cautiously. There was a huge crater in front of them. The soil and rocks around it had been scorched and sparks were scattered across thousands of meters. It was a complete mess. At the center of the crater there was something stuck into the ground. It was still emitting scorching flames. Upon closer inspection, it was a huge piece of metal. Just its thickness alone was more than 8 feet. What is this? Why does he look so familiar? Someone asked. The next moment, someone recognized it. This is a fragment of the heaven and earth pill furnace. The crowd was in an uproar. Just now, they were still discussing whether or not the furnace of heaven and earth had exploded. Many people did not believe it at all, thinking that the furnace of heaven and earth was a divine object that could not be damaged, and no one could destroy it. But no one expected that the slap in the face would come so quickly. A huge fragment of the pill furnace had actually landed in front of them. If they raised their heads to look, they would see a sky full of meteors falling in all directions. If they were not mistaken, they were all fragments of the heaven and earth pill furnace, and there were tens of thousands of them. This meant that the heaven and earth pill cauldron had been destroyed. Furthermore, it had been blown into countless pieces. Everyone was shocked to the extreme. There was no need to ask, there were only 2 possibilities for the furnace of heaven and earth to be destroyed. One was that the immortal devouring beast had returned and attacked the furnace of heaven and earth, because only the immortal devouring beast had the ability to destroy this heavenly treasure. The second possibility was that it was Lin's pet beast. At this moment, Lin Jean was surrounded by a bloody aura while Old Lord was protected by the large green carp's water vapor. Even though these two were the closest to the furnace of heaven and earth, they were unharmed. The heaven and earth pill furnace that was as large as a planet was nowhere to be seen. In its place was a giant beast covered in flames. It could be seen that this giant beast was a wolf beast, but it had 2 heads, 2 hind legs, and 4 front claws. Especially in terms of size, it had already reached the size of a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, giving off an extremely strong sense of oppression. No doubt, in terms of aura, Xiaohua's successful evolution had completely surpassed Old Lord's green carp transformation. He was even slightly weaker than the immortal devouring beast. The advancement from rank 7 to rank 8 had surpassed all his previous advancements. Lin Jean was overwhelmed with emotions. However, perhaps because Xiaohua's advancement had given Lin Jean a unique sense of perception, Lin Jean knew that the immortal devouring beast had noticed the situation here and was on its way here. If they didn't want to fight the immortal devouring beast now, the best option was to escape. After saying that to the old Supreme Elder, the 2 of them left immediately without any hesitation. Under Lin Jin's control, Xiaohua reverted to his normal size and returned to Lin Jin's body. Before Old Lord left, he took Lin Jin's pellet sea with him. After all, the pellet sea was still of great use to him, so he couldn't abandon it. Moments after they left, the immortal devouring beast arrived. However, Lin Jin and Old Lord had already concealed their auras. They weren't immortals, so the immortal devouring beast couldn't find them. In the foreign realms, the long silence at the edge of the dangerous lightning pool from before was once again broken by someone. Two silhouettes appeared beside the now empty lightning pool. One of them was the Beastman God's hierarch and the other was Patriarch Xuepao. After the two of them were defeated at Daluo Temple, they had been hiding in a secluded place, focusing on their cultivation and gathering information. They knew that Jade Dragon Kingdom had been promoted to a premium country. They also knew that Daluo Temple had a new abbot, but they didn't act recklessly. After all, they didn't have much confidence in defeating Lin Jin, especially when they learned that Daluo Temple's new abbot was a true immortal. Not to mention, he was the famous monk Huiyuan. This fact instilled fear in them. Clearly, they didn't know the specifics and assumed that Lin Jin had mastered a technique similar to the black mist that could conceal his immortal aura. Hence, they didn't dare to act recklessly. They had made some progress in refining the ghost prison's black mist. Now, the black mist they released could cover a larger area, but it wasn't enough to seal off an entire country yet. Mainly, they felt that they were lacking, so they needed help. How were they supposed to find help? The Beast God's cult leader had no clue, but Patriarch Xuepao was full of trick. He obviously knew about the realm outside the realm. He also knew that Lin Jin had come here before and made a strong enemy. Hence, when the two of them arrived at the outer region, they started to scout around and found out about Sir God Manman's existence. Later on, by coincidence, they found out that Sir God Manman and the others might have died under the lightning pool. Hence, the two of them came to investigate. Lord Manman was a true immortal expert too. It's a pity he's dead. Otherwise, he would have been more than willing to join forces with us to fight Lin Jin. Patriarch Xuepao gritted his teeth. Chapter 777. Throughout their search, other than God Yen, the other villainous immortals they found were too weak. None of them were at the level of a true immortal. And now, they needed a true immortal to deal with Lin Jin. There must be something going on down there. If God Yen died down there, it wouldn't be wise to waste his treasures. Let's go down and take a look. The Beast God's cult leader was in low spirit. Previously, he had the upper hand. Who would have thought that because he wanted to deal with Lin Jin, all his experts would perish, and he would be the only one left. Hence, the Beast God's cult leader hated two people the most. One was obviously Lin Jin, and the other was Patriarch Xuepao. However, he still had to rely on Patriarch Xuepao. Hence, the Beast God's cult leader was in low spirit. Upon hearing that they were going down, Patriarch Xuepao nodded. He had the same intention. Both of them were at the level of true immortals. Although they knew that it would be dangerous down there, they were confident that they could come and go as they pleased. And so, the two of them flew down into the lightning pool. 3 days later, loud noises came from the lightning pool. Then, a murderous aura shot up into the sky, shaking the entire outer realm. A huge spider broke through the hole and crawled out from below. The one controlling the spider was an immortal whose lower body was swallowed by a giant snake. For some reason, the snake only swallowed the lower part of the immortal's body. Then, it fused with the immortal, becoming a half-human, half-snake monster. Although the lower half of his body was that of a giant snake, the immortal moved extremely quickly. His upper body was naked, and snake scales could be faintly seen under his skin. His hair was disheveled, and there was an evil vertical eye on his forehead. If Lin Jin was here, he would have recognized this half-human, half-snake monster. It looked very much like a human. God Yen. Ha 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 ha. The man burst into maniacal laughter after he emerged. His voice sounded menacing. Lin Jin, Monk Huiyuan, you didn't expect this, did you? God Yen wasn't fated to die. Not only did I not die, but I also benefited from my misfortune by obtaining the sage's inheritance. Today, God Yen, will be the day you die." The half-human, half-snake monster was God Yen, who had entered the lightning pool earlier. After Sir Godgu, another person crawled out of the cave. It looked like it was Ancestor Shuepao. However, at that very moment, Ancestor Shuepao's face was filled with fear. It was as though he had seen an extremely terrifying scene before. Facing the monster like Sir Godgu, Ancestor Shuepao was extremely respectful. "Divine Lord, I too have a deep grudge against Lin Jin. I'm willing to serve you." This was a show of loyalty. Patriarch Shuepao had no other choice. He was lucky to be able to survive. The leader of the Beast God Church was not as lucky as him. Previously, when the two of them went down together, it was quite smooth at the beginning, and they did not encounter any danger. However, when they encountered the heaven-mending Spider Queen, something was amiss. The two of them were directly captured by the heaven-mending spider, and brought even deeper underground. After that, the master of the Beast God Church was swallowed by Sir God Guy directly. He was probably used as nourishment. The reason why Patriarch Shuepao was still alive was because he was smart enough to ask for Sir God Guy's mercy in time and explain his intentions clearly. Of course, Patriarch Shuepao said that he was asking Sir God Guy to deal with Lin Jin. Admittedly, Patriarch Shuepao was extremely smart. He had guessed Sir God Guy's greatest wish, so he managed to survive. The poor master of the Beast God Church did not even get a chance to speak before he was killed and swallowed. One should know that the master of the Beast God Church was also a genuine immortal. However, he was eaten by Sir God Guang like a prey. Even Patriarch Shuepao could not stand such a scene. It would most likely become his nightmare in the future. However, after this scare and narrow escape, Patriarch Shuepao realized that this was an opportunity for him. This Sir God Guy was clearly very different from the rumors. He had obtained a sage's inheritance and his strength had reached the level of a carefree immortal or even higher. His strength would definitely surpass the master of the Beast God Church. Hence, working with Sir God Guy was definitely better than working with the master of the Beast God Church. This was a good thing. The only thing Patriarch Shuepao had to consider was what he should do to prove his worth, so that Sir God Guy wouldn't eat him. Now that Sir God Guy had seen the light of day again, he couldn't wait to seek revenge on Lin Jin. After learning from Patriarch Shuepao that Lin Jin had returned to Middle-earth, Sir God Guy brought the heaven-mending spider with him without hesitation. "Sir God, I have a treasure that can blot out the sky. It can block out auras and avoid detection by that immortal devouring beast." Patriarch Shuepao offered his treasure. He knew that he had to prove his worth in order to survive. Unexpectedly, Sir God Guy sneered and grabbed Patriarch Shuepao before flying out of the miasma barrier. The heaven-mending spider followed beside him, as if it had become Sir God Guy's guard. Then, the immortal devouring beast's giant claw descended from the sky and Sir God Guy attacked it fearlessly. Patriarch Shuepao was scared out of his wits. He couldn't stop trembling, but it was no longer up to him to decide what to do. Loud sounds of battle rang out incessantly. Moments later, Sir God Guy fled in defeat and returned to the outer realm. The immortal devouring beast chased after him relentlessly. The entire outer realm was affected and many itinerant immortals died. After 3 days of chaos, Sir God Guy went into hiding and the immortal devouring beast couldn't sense the immortal's aura either. After wandering for a while, it let out a roar and returned to the 9 heavens. The great chaos finally came to an end. However, at that very moment the extraterritorial land was already in a mess. Sir God Yen had suffered quite a lot of injuries when he fought against the celestial swallowing beast. It was obvious that he was at a disadvantage. However, to be able to fight the immortal devouring beast for a while, and even escape for 3 days, he had already broken the record. At least, no one could do this now. Patriarch Shwe-Pao was using this as an excuse to flatter Sir Godguy. After some thought, Sir Godguy came to a realization. That's right. He wanted to kill Lin Jin and Hui Yuan, not the immortal devouring beast. After all, the immortal devouring beast was an existence that could destroy the entire immortal civilization. Even an immortal emperor died in its hands. It was an invincible existence in this world. The fact that Sir Godguy was able to fight the immortal devouring beast without dying and escape for 3 days proved his strength. Based on this, Sir Godguy's current strength was only below the immortal devouring beast. Other than the immortal devouring beast, he was equally invincible. At this thought, Sir Godguy was in a good mood. He looked at Patriarch Shwe-Pao and said, "You mentioned that you have a treasure that can conceal your aura. Take it out." Patriarch Shwe-Pao didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately offered the ghost cage with both hands and told him how to activate it. At least you know what's good for you. If you only handed over the treasure and didn't tell me how to activate it, I would have killed you immediately." As Sir Godguy spoke, he revealed a mouthful of sharp teeth that had turned into a beast. Patriarch Shwe-Pao's scalp went numb and he quickly knelt on the ground. "Your subordinate is loyal to you, Sir God." Chapter 778. Lord Masked God looked away in satisfaction and reached out to grab the ghost cage. He activated it according to the spell that Patriarch Bloodrobe had told him, and a cloud of black fog immediately surged out. Inside the black fog, Sir Godcover was also unable to sense the aura outside. This meant that Patriarch Shwe-Pao was right. The black mist indeed had the same effect as the miasma in the foreign lands, and that was to conceal one's aura. Lord God Yen quickly understood the use of this Dharma treasure. With this item, he could step into Middle-earth as he pleased and did not need to worry about being detected by the immortal devouring beast. An idea popped into Patriarch Shwe-Pao's mind and he advised, "Divine Lord, your skills are unparalleled. Your name will surely resound throughout the world. However, our top priority right now is to kill Lin Jin. If I'm not mistaken, this man possesses the Heaven's Foundation fragment. If we don't get rid of him soon, he'll become a huge threat in the future." A fragment of the cornerstone of the heavenly Tao? Lord God Gu's eyes lit up. He immediately looked at Patriarch Bloodbubble and asked, "You've seen it before?" Patriarch Shwe-Pao was flustered by Sir Godnan's stare. Of course, he had never seen it before and he did not dare to lie. However, Patriarch Shwe-Pao had always been good at debating. He immediately used his eloquence to make his deduction. His words were a mixture of truth and falsehood. His explanation was extremely vivid. With Patriarch Shwe-Pao's deduction as proof, it sounded reasonable. Sir Godman nodded continuously. It was obvious that he believed what Patriarch Shwe-Pao had said. Most importantly, Sir Godman knew how powerful the foundation stone of Heavenway was. At this moment, he flipped his palm, and a piece of gravel emerged from the flesh of his palm. The gravel was not big, and it seemed to be made of iron and stone. There seemed to be a faint glow circulating around the gravel. When Patriarch Shwe-Pao saw this piece of rubble, his heart pounded and his eyes burned with passion. He knew what it was: God's stone. In other words, it was a fragment of the heavenly Tao cornerstone. That year, when the immortal emperor was about to die, he shattered a corner of the cornerstone, causing a few fragments to fall down. One could imagine that even if the fragments were only the size of a fingernail, they still had the ability to communicate with the laws of the heavenly Tao. They were truly supreme treasures. Ancestor Shwe-Pao was the first person to know this secret, so he spared no effort in searching for the whereabouts of these fragments. It could be said that he had put in a lot of effort, but he had never obtained a single piece. What made Patriarch Shwe-Pao even more frustrated was the fact that Lin Jin wasn't the only one with a Heaven's Path cornerstone fragment. Now Lord Guy had one as well. For a moment, Patriarch Shui Pao had an urge to jump up and snatch the fragment from Sir God Yan's hand. However, his rationality told him that he would be courting death if he did that. God Sovereign Yen had already surpassed Carefree Immortal, and there was even a heaven-mending spider, which was equivalent to Carefree Immortal, eyeing him covetously from the side. If he made a move, he would undoubtedly die. Therefore, Patriarch Shui Pao suppressed the jealousy and impulse in his heart and hurriedly said, "Congratulations, Sir God. This is a fragment of the God's Stone." Sir God Gon laughed. He had previously guessed the origin of the fragment. With Patriarch Shui Pao's explanation, he could confirm his guess. The flesh and blood in his palm rumbled like a mouth, swallowing the heavenly Tao cornerstone fragment back. It was all thanks to this shard that Sir God Gu could survive. On that day, his underlings, the evil immortal, had died under the attack of the heaven-mending spider. Even Sir God Yu himself was surrounded by danger. He had no way out and could only continue to descend. Perhaps Sir God Gu's luck was really good. There really was another world under that cave. He found a giant snake below. The giant snake seemed to be in a deep sleep. At that time, Sir God Gu did not know that the giant snake was the original form of the saint who mended the sky. His attention was completely attracted by one thing, a fragment on the giant snake's forehead. At that time, there was a halo on the fragment. It was definitely not an ordinary item. Sir God Gu flew over and grabbed the fragment while the giant snake was asleep. In the end, the giant snake woke up instantly and opened its mouth to bite the lower half of Sir God Gu's body. At that time, Sir God Gu thought that he was definitely going to die. Unexpectedly, at that moment of life and death, something seemed to be activated. The fragment in his palm actually burrowed into his palm and entered his body. At the same time, it released a force that shattered the giant snake's head. Just like that, the lower half of Sir God Gu's body was destroyed, and he almost fainted. When he woke up again, he was already one with the giant snake. It must have been the heavenly Tao cornerstone fragment that unleashed its divine power. After surviving a great disaster, Sir God Gu's power also increased greatly. He almost grasped the power of half a saint, and could even command and control the heaven-mending spider. However, perhaps because he had expended too much energy, Sir God Gu was weak and famished. Coincidentally, Beast God's cult leader and Patriarch Shui Pao descended into the cave. Sir God Gu went up and devoured Beast God's cult leader to replenish his energy. If it weren't for Patriarch Shui Pao's quick reflexes and persuading Sir God Gu, Patriarch Shui Pao would have been eaten too. Sir God Gu knew very well that he was no longer an ordinary immortal. He was a monster who had fused with a saint's body. It was all thanks to the heavenly Tao cornerstone fragment that he managed to survive. That fragment was also the source of his power and life. Without it, Sir God Yen knew that he would definitely die. That was because it was this thing that had changed the rules, allowing him to fuse with the saint's snake body. Once he lost the cornerstone fragment of the heavenly way, this state of fusion would collapse. Sir God Gu would never allow this to happen. Upon hearing that Lin Jin also had a heavenly Tao cornerstone fragment, Sir God Gu's previous doubts about Lin Jin were suddenly cleared up. As if a thick fog had been lifted, everything became clear. It's no wonder Lin Jin is so heaven-defying. So he has a piece of the cornerstone fragment too. Great, it's just what I wanted to do to him. When I kill him and get that piece of the cornerstone fragment, my strength will definitely increase. I can even kill immortal devouring beasts. Only then will I be able to rule over the world and rule the universe. Sir God Gu's eyes glinted with greed. Fusing with the saint's snake body wasn't without its side effect. The saint's blood was forcefully fused with his. Although the heavenly Tao cornerstone fragment maintained the balance, it still left Sir God Gu in excruciating pain. As a result, his temper became even more violent. After all, in the past, he would only kill but not eat humans. It was due to fusing with the saint's snake body that he developed a bestial nature. Patriarch Shuepao, how do you think I can find Lin Jin so quickly? Sir God Gu asked. Another side effect of the fusion was that Sir God Gu's brain no longer liked to ponder over problems. He preferred a straightforward approach. Since he loved killing, he couldn't be bothered to think about such things. He simply tossed the responsibility to Patriarch Shuepao. Didn't he spare the man's life so that he could come up with a plan? If Patriarch Shuepao could provide a reasonable explanation, Sir God Gu wouldn't spare the man's life. But if he couldn't, Sir God Gu happened to be hungry. He stuck out his snake head that was several times longer than a normal human's and licked his lips, revealing his fangs as he stared at Patriarch Shuepao. Perhaps eating the other party was a good choice. Chapter 779. In the Outerium, the immortal devouring beast had suddenly appeared and rampaged around. Even though it was only in a part of the Outerium, the shock it caused was unprecedented. Many itinerant immortals were so frightened that they hid in their respective caves, shuddering in fear. Even though the immortal devouring beast had left, its aura hadn't dissipated yet. Itinerant immortals were like this, and so were the remaining immortal sections. When the immortal devouring beast descended, it just so happened that it barged into an immortal Dao sect and started a massacre. Dozens of immortals from that immortal Dao sect died. When the news spread, all the immortals in the outer realms feared for their lives. After that, the news of a half-man, half-snake monster leading a huge spider spread. There were even people who said that the half-man, half-snake monster was the famous true immortal of the evil path, God Lord Yen. Xian Dao sect received the news earlier, so they took it seriously. Enlightened Master Miao Yen was the first to understand the situation and immediately summoned his disciples back. We can now confirm that it's God Lord Yen. I didn't expect this evil immortal to still be alive. Inside Xian Dao sect, Enlightened Master Miao Yen frowned. The other Xian Dao sect immortals in the room also wore solemn expressions. The situation was obviously different now. If it had only been God Lord Cover, Reverend Miao Yen alone would have been able to suppress him. However, the information they obtained was that God Lord Cover had already changed. Not only did he have the appearance of a half-human, half-snake sage, but he could also control the heaven-mending spider. That was not all. The immortal devouring beast had been lured down by him. This God Lord Cover had actually been able to exchange blows with the immortal devouring beast without dying, and had even managed to escape in the end. What this represented was a little scary. God Lord Yan's strength had clearly improved by leaps and bounds. Enlightened Master Miao Yen might no longer be his match. If you can't fight him, it's best to avoid him for now, Chen Xiankong suggested. He had interacted with Lin Jin more often, so he was deeply influenced by him. Fight if you can, but don't force yourself if you can't win. Where there's life, there's hope. This was what Lin Jin repeatedly told Chen Xiankong. Enlightened Master Miao Yen nodded. Sometimes, one shouldn't be reckless. One had to retreat when it was time to do so. But where should we retreat to? An immortal asked. However, Spiritual Master Miao Yen had already made up his mind about this. There weren't many places to hide in the outer realm, and even if there were, it wouldn't be as good as the place Lin Jin mentioned to him. This place was the unending mountain river diagram. Lin Jin had left behind a cloud bridge that led to the unending nature landscape in Xian Dao sect. Firstly, he could come and go as he pleased without having to travel long distances. Secondly, if anything happened, he could hide in the bridge to avoid danger. Now that there was a place to hide, someone asked when they would avoid the danger. Reverend Miao Yen bluntly said that they would enter the unending mountain and river diagram right away. Taoist Master Miao Yen knew a bit of divination. His eyelids had been twitching since the beginning, and there was a sense of uneasiness in his heart. Thus, he did not plan to delay any further. Fortunately, he had already gathered the disciples in advance, so he didn't need to spend too much time. Moreover, the treasures and books in the sect were all moved into the unending mountain river diagram. Taoist Master Miao Yan's premonition was obviously not baseless. In fact, at the same time, God Lord Gu had already charged into the Xian Dao sect with the heaven-mending spider and ancestor Xuepao. If they hadn't met Reverend Mystic Moon and Immortal Xianhang, they would have charged into Xian Dao sect. Reverend Mystic Moon and Immortal Xianhang were unlucky to have met God Lord Gu along the way. Naturally, God Lord Gu had his eyes on these two immortals. There was no other reason. Firstly, he was hungry. Secondly, in his eyes, the Cloud Dao sect was in cahoots with Lin Jin, so they had to be killed. With this, Xian Dao sect managed to escape. Reverend Mystic Moon's cultivation was extremely high, on par with Xian Dao sect's Reverend Miao Yan. She might even be slightly stronger. Among the immortals in the foreign lands, she was one of the best. Perhaps she was the #1 expert in the foreign lands. In the past, it wouldn't have been difficult for Reverend Mystic Moon to defeat God Lord Gu. But now, Reverend Mystic Moon was severely injured in just one move. Seeing this, Immortal Xianhang's heart was burning with anxiety. He was only a void immortal and he knew that he was inferior to Xianyu, much less the current God Lord Yan. However, Immortal Xianhang could not watch the woman he loved die in front of him. He knew a secret technique called 10,000-mile teleportation. This technique wasn't easy to cultivate and it was a superior immortal technique for escaping. To cast it, one must have a matching amulet and this amulet was extremely difficult to make. As for Immortal Xianhang, he only had one left. In other words, if he wanted to escape now, forget God Lord Gu, even the immortal devouring beast couldn't catch him. However, Immortal Xianhang rushed over without hesitation, took out the amulet, and stuck it on Reverend Mystic Moon. The last thing Reverend Mystic Moon saw was her junior brother's smile. Pure and clean, just like how he looked when he first joined the sect thousands of years ago. With a flash of light, Reverend Mystic Moon was instantly teleported into the Cloud Dao sect. She was stunned for a moment before she realized what had happened. Junior brother! Reverend Mystic Moon cried out in pain. Reverend Mystic Moon knew what would happen. Her junior brother, Immortal Xianhang, had given her the chance to live while she chose death. The Cloud Dao sect was relatively far away, so they had enough time to take refuge. God Lord Gu, on the other hand, went to Xian Dao sect with a murderous aura but came up empty-handed. In a fit of rage, he destroyed Xian Dao sect before rushing over to the Cloud Dao sect, but it was still empty. In other words, he didn't achieve his goal at all. In a fit of rage, God Lord Gu began a massacre and no one could stop him. Many itinerant immortals were caught by God Lord Gu and swallowed alive. They died horrible death. However, Xian Dao sect and the Cloud Dao sect survived and hid inside the unending nature landscape. Reverend Mystic Moon's sorrow hadn't subsided yet, but she forced herself to stay awake and discuss a plan with Reverend Miao Yan. There was no doubt that God Lord Gu's cultivation level had completely surpassed Xiaoyao Xian. Even the Cloud Dao sect's rank 8 storm beast was no match for him. If they really fought, they would most likely be killed by God Lord Gu. Both Reverend Miao Yan and Reverend Mystic Moon knew this. Even if Lin Jin came, he wouldn't be God Lord Gu's match. We have to inform him about this. Reverend Miao Yan looked worried. How did that God Lord Gu get the appearance of a saint? Heaven must be blind. An immortal's eyes were red. He was a disciple of the Cloud Dao sect. After losing Immortal Xianhang, the sect was bound by a common enemy. Unfortunately, they weren't as skilled as God Lord Gu, so they couldn't seek revenge on God Lord Gu. Fortunately, God Lord Gu didn't know where the unending nature landscape was, so he couldn't find this place. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have this final shelter. They were at their wits' end, so they could only discuss this with Lin Jin. But the problem was, they couldn't find him. Because Lin Jin was currently evolving Xiaohua in the Nine Heaven world. Unless Lin Jin entered the unending nature landscape on his own accord, not even Xiao Shu Lu could contact him. Chapter 780. Inside the unending nature landscape, the immortals grew anxious. Without realizing it, they had become extremely reliant on Lin Jin. But since they couldn't contact Lin Jin, they could only wait. Sage Mystic Moon didn't wait any longer. She was determined to avenge her junior brother, so she was thinking of ways to improve her cultivation. As the current sect master of the Cloud Path sect, Sage Mystic Moon naturally knew some of the sect's secret technique. She entered the Storm Beast lair alone to search for a way to improve herself. The others didn't try to dissuade her, but they all knew that even if Sage Mystic Moon managed to achieve a breakthrough, she would at most reach the level of a carefree immortal. Still, she wouldn't be a match for God Yen. God Yen had clearly grasped the power of a sage. He was half human and half snake, and could control an ancient beast like the heaven-mending spider. Based on the current situation, no one could defeat him other than the immortal devouring beast. They had been waiting for Lin Jin because they wanted to find someone to discuss their strategy with. They weren't hoping that Lin Jin could defeat Lord Gu. Everyone knew this. Perhaps it was because Sage Mystic Moon knew this that she went into the Storm Beast lair alone to study the secret technique. She was clearly planning to seek revenge on her own. Everyone, I'm afraid that God Lord Guy has other motives for ambushing Xian Dao sect and Cloud Path sect. It's most likely to lure Lin Jin out for revenge, Hui Yuan said after some thought. He knew God Yen well. God Yen was a narrow-minded man who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. After suffering such a huge loss at Lin Jin and Hui Yuan's hands, God Yen almost lost his life. Hence, the first thing he did after coming out was to seek revenge. The reason why he attacked Xian Dao sect and Cloud Path sect was most likely because of Lin Jin. Does that mean he wanted to lure Lin Jin out? Someone had a flash of inspiration. This is bad. Now that he failed, he'll definitely fly into a rage. He'll most likely head to Heartland and cause trouble for the Jade Dragon Kingdom. The ones who spoke were Qin Yunshang and Chen Xiankong. They knew about how the Beast God cult controlled the 5 countries of Grassy Continent to attack the Jade Dragon Kingdom. There was no guarantee that God Yen wouldn't do the same. With God Yan's current cultivation level, no one could stop him if he wanted to attack a mortal country. Divine Lord Yen still has a trace of celestial aura. He doesn't dare to leave the outer region. Otherwise, he will be chased by the celestial devouring beast. Someone shook his head and raised an objection. However, very quickly, someone said, someone saw another person besides Sir Godman. It is Patriarch Xuepao. Don't forget, he has a treasure that can hide his aura. Maybe that thing has already fallen into Sir Godman's hands. In an instant, everyone gasped and fell silent. If that was the case, the situation would be troublesome. Because based on the current situation, God Lord Guy might really go to the Jade Dragon Kingdom to cause trouble. 2 immortal sects could hide, but how could a kingdom do that? Even the unending nature landscape couldn't possibly contain the entire Jade Dragon Kingdom. For a moment, everyone was burning with anxiety. Meanwhile, Lin Jin was oblivious to all this. After Xiaohua evolved, Lin Jin was in a great mood. Instead of returning home, he went with Elderly Lord to the deepest part of the 9 Heaven realm, where Primordial Immortal Mountain was, where the Heaven's foundation was located. However, they dared not approach. Not only was the Heavenly Tao Foundation here, but it was also the habitat of the celestial devouring beast. Not only that, 2,000 years ago, when the Immortal Emperor led many immortals here, they were killed by the Heavenly Tao Foundation. Ever since then, this immortal mountain had been shrouded in chaotic thunderclouds and no one could set foot inside. If they approached recklessly, they would immediately trigger a lightning tribulation and die a violent death. Lin Jin and the old Supreme Elder had come here because the old Supreme Elder wanted to retrieve another pill furnace that he had abandoned in the past. The Heaven and Earth pill furnace had been destroyed during Xiao Hua's advancement. If the old Supreme Elder wanted to refine something, he would not be able to do so without a suitable weapon. The pill furnace that he had refined himself had been thrown in this heaven realm. The old Supreme Elder had come to retrieve this sword immortal weapon. Of course, this place was far from the immortal mountain. But even from afar, they could feel the danger of the immortal mountain. Lin Jin looked worried because only he knew about something. After Xiao Hua evolved to rank 8, the Museum of Deadly Beasts didn't give him a method to evolve to rank 9. This was the first time. In the past, the Museum of Deadly Beasts could identify any pet beast and give them an evolution method without exception. But this rank 8 Xiao Hua was an exception. Lin Jin was naturally worried. Without a method to evolve to rank 9, how could Xiao Hua evolve? It was like a player who had been cheating for a long time only to realize that his cheating device had lost its effect in the next match. There were no more hints. This was an endless sense of fear that only Lin Jin could feel. Although rank 8 Xiao Hua was strong enough, so strong that Lin Jin believed that as long as he didn't provoke the celestial devouring beast, he could deal with any enemy in this world. From now on, Xiao Hua would be able to live a peaceful life. Perhaps this was a good thing. Lin Jin and the celestial devouring beast didn't have any grudges, so there was no need for them to fight each other to the death. But this was like taking a step towards the door. To reach the top of the mountain, one had to take 100,000 steps. But after 99,999 steps, one had to stop. Not being able to take this final step was excruciating. Other than discomfort, there was also regret. But after calming down, he thought about it. Why did he have to take this final step? It wasn't necessary. Why did he have to fight to the death with the celestial devouring beast? Now that Lin Jin didn't provoke the celestial devouring beast, the celestial devouring beast wouldn't provoke him. Wouldn't it be better if they minded their own business from now on? At this thought, Lin Jin took a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt enlightened and much more at ease. Right. There was no need for him to fight to the death. He was no different from standing on top of the mountain. He was invincible and carefree. Not to mention, he had made so many friends. With a single command, the world would respond. So what was the point of being so demanding? He should just live a more relaxed life. Lin Jin brainwashed himself, and slowly, it took effect. Just then, Old Lord retrieved the pellet furnace he had discarded earlier and smiled at Lin Jin. Young friend Lin, it's done. Let's go. We shouldn't stay here for long. If we stay too long, something might happen. Lin Jin nodded. Lin Jin nodded. Then, he tapped on Cosmos ink and said to Old Lord, Old Lord, Lin Jin will take you to a good place. Old Lord was the most important friend Lin Jin knew. It was too dangerous to leave Old Lord alone in the Nine Heavens world. Moreover, Lin Jin knew that Old Lord was bent on seeking revenge on the celestial devouring beast. Hence, to protect him, it was safest to bring him back to the unending nature landscape. Old Lord glanced at Lin Jin, as if he could tell that Lin Jin wasn't looking to improve himself. But he shook his head. It's just an art world, a tiny unending nature landscape. It's just a joke. It's fine if you don't go. Back then, I only drew it for fun with the immortal emperor and Xian Xuanzi. I didn't expect it to fall into your hands. Lin Jin was surprised that Old Lord was so familiar with the unending nature landscape. But soon, Lin Jin came to a realization. You're Duke Huanglong? Inside the unending nature landscape, there were 3 names: Duke Huanglong, Li Jian, and Xian Xuanzi. Lin Jin already knew that Li Jian was the immortal emperor and Xian Xuanzi was the immortal empress. Only Duke Huanglong was unknown to him. Now, it seemed like this Duke Huanglong was most likely Old Lord. The Grand Supreme Elder laughed. I've almost forgotten the name of the secular world. This was considered an admission. Lin Jin was about to say something when a silhouette emerged from the cosmos ink he tapped on. It was Xiao Shulu. She looked anxious as she pulled Lin Jin away. Lin Jin was stunned. He could tell that Xiao Shulu had something urgent to attend to, so he didn't ask. Old Lord was stunned. After a moment of thought, he followed them. He and Lin Jin were old friends, so he would have to rely on Lin Jin in the future. If Lin Jin encountered any other trouble, Old Lord wouldn't mind lending a helping hand. Soon, Lin Jin met up with the immortals of Xian Dao sect and Cloud Path sect and learned about Lord God Cover. Upon hearing that Lord God Cover had harmed Xian Hang Immortal, Lin Jin was instantly enraged. Chapter 781. It didn't take a lot of people to tell Lin Jin the story. Throughout the process, many of them noticed Old Lord, who was standing at the side. This was mainly because Old Lord was dressed casually, just like a fisherman. There was nothing special about him, and he had a mortal body without any immortal aura. In addition, the immortals present, be it Xian Dao sect or Cloud Path sect, had never seen Old Lord's immortal officials in the past, so they didn't recognize him immediately. However, they found him familiar. The more they looked at him, the more familiar he seemed. Master, look at that old man standing next to Appraiser Lin. Although he's dressed plainly, he has a unique aura about him. He also looks very familiar, Chen Xiankong whispered to Spiritual Master Ingenious Yen beside him. The latter nodded. I can tell too. He does look familiar. Spiritual Master Miao Yen frowned. He felt that the name was right at the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't say it out loud. This made him feel terrible. At this moment, a young immortal suddenly thought of something and said, Master, Senior Brothers, this old man looks very much like the Elder Lord in the Law of Tao. Old Lord? The immortals were shocked. Their first reaction was that it was impossible. Old Lord was in existence on par with the ancestors of immortals. In terms of experience, he definitely surpassed the immortal emperors of the past. Old Lord's Taoist scripture was a classic that had been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. No matter which immortal sect it was, other than worshipping their ancestors, Old Lord was a must and he had to be in the main seat. This meant that everyone admitted that Old Lord was the ancestor of immortals. That was why they didn't believe it. How could a legendary existence in the eyes of immortals appear here? But the more they looked, the more he looked like him. In an instant, Spiritual Master Miao Yen and the others found it hard to judge. If they didn't understand, they should ask. This was applicable no matter where it was. Spiritual Master Miao Yen was polite. He went forward and saluted. May I know your name, old sir? Old Lord was stunned but quickly reacted. He probably didn't expect the other party to not recognize him. But that made sense. He wasn't an immortal official of the Celestial Dynasty, nor some top-notch immortal. Old Lord rarely saw him, so it was normal that he didn't recognize him. My common name is Duke Huang Long. The Grand Supreme Elder did not put on airs. His state of mind was already extremely clear, and he did not care about these meaningless things. Now, he only wanted to see who could change the current world. From the Grand Supreme Elder's point of view, he could not do it himself. After all, this required luck, and the Grand Supreme Elder felt that he lacked some luck. Now that fate was with Lin Jin, he followed him. He wanted to see what Lin Jin would do in the future, how he would change himself, how he would change the world. The Elder Lord answered truthfully. On the other side, when Spiritual Master Miao Yen heard the 3 words Duke Huang Longgong, it was as if he was struck by lightning. His eyes widened and his hands trembled, but he reacted. He immediately took a step back and bowed deeply. Xian Dao Sect's head teacher, Miao Yen, greets Laozi. He was extremely respectful. It could be said that even when facing an immortal emperor, enlightened being Miao Yen would not be this respectful. This was because the elderly lord's status was too high, especially since enlightened being Miao Yen was absolutely respectful and worshipful towards the elderly lord. Seeing him today, Taoist Master Miao Yan's emotions were complicated and excited. It was hard to use words to describe. Hearing Reverend Miao Yan's words, the immortals were also shocked. Those who reacted quickly also hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. In an instant, all the immortals bowed. No one expected the old man who followed Lin Jin into the painting world to be the founder of immortality, Elder Lord. With this, the way they looked at Lin Jin changed. However, Lin Jin didn't have the time to care about this. At this moment, he had a gloomy expression on his face as he asked for God Lord Yan's location. He was going to take the initiative to attack. God Lord Yan hadn't died and had gone to find trouble with the Xian Dao sect and Yun Dao sect. Celestial Xian Heng had even died to him. This meant that Sir God Gu had come for him. Moreover, Lin Jin had already learned from Sage Xianyue that the current God Lord Yan's strength was outstanding and had already surpassed the scope of a carefree immortal. Moreover, he had the heaven-mending spider by his side that could be controlled by him. It could be said that currently, no one could rival him. Previously, when the immortals came to Lin Jin, they only wanted to discuss countermeasures. They had no intention of relying on Lin Jin to deal with God Lord Yan. But now, things were different. In the immortals' eyes, Lin Jin was definitely not strong enough. But with Elder Lord around, things were different. Elder Lord's status was too high and he was also the founder of immortality. Back then, his cultivation had far surpassed Carefree Immortal and he was considered the #1 immortal. If Elder Lord were to help, it wouldn't be difficult for him to deal with God Lord Yan. Hence, the immortals pinned their hopes on Elder Lord. But at this, Elder Lord shook his head. You fellows are mistaken. At present, I am just an ordinary mortal. Forget a carefree immortal, I am not even a match for a true immortal. Besides, I am already old. There are many things that I am incapable of doing. You fellows should find someone else. You guys should look for another expert. At the mention of look for another expert, Elder Lord's gaze turned to Lin Jin. His hint couldn't be more obvious. The immortals were confused. For a moment they couldn't tell if Elder Lord was being humble, being serious, or even joking. However, they didn't have to beg Lin Jin for help. Lin Jin would never leave this matter unattended. Earlier, he found out that God Lord Yan was still in the foreign lands. Logically speaking, it was best for Lin Jin to wait for the man to leave before making his move. This way, Lin Jin would have the upper hand. After all, God Lord Yan only dared to move around in the black fog. Otherwise, he would be attacked by the immortal devouring beast. Lin Jin now knew about Patriarch Xue Pao and God Lord Yan's collusion. Hence, he was sure that God Lord Yan would use Patriarch Xue Pao's black fog to leave the foreign lands and wreak havoc on Middle-earth. However, Lin Jin didn't want to wait. God Lord Yan had the appearance of a saint and could control the sky-mending spider, but so what? Lin Jin wasn't weak either and he couldn't afford to wait either. God Lord Yan might already be on his way to Middle-earth and his target must be the Jade Dragon Kingdom. Hence, no matter what, Lin Jin had to show up. Since that was the case, instead of waiting for the man to force him out, he might as well take the initiative to attack. Young friend, if you're going, I have a reason to go with you, Elder Lord suddenly said. I'm quite familiar with the Saint Sky Mending Spider, so I might be able to persuade him to come back. Lin Jin's eyes lit up. With Elder Lord's help, things would be much more stable. Thank you, Elder Lord. Lin Jin smiled. Elder Lord nodded. Let's go. Without further ado, Lin Jin had Shu Xiaolu open the Divine Gates Cloud Bridge and enter together with Elder Lord. Upon seeing this, the other immortals followed suit, especially immortal Xianyu. She had to go for her revenge this time. She was aware of immortal Xian Heng's affection for her. She would never forget the final scene when he teleported her away. Hence, the usually gentle and calm immortal Xian Yu was currently filled with murderous intent. Chapter 782. Lin Jin and the others stepped out of a treetop temple in the outer realm. Now that Xian Dao sect had been destroyed, the Heaven's Gate cloud bridge that was left behind in Xian Dao sect's unending nature landscape was gone as well. Fortunately, Fire Source had left an opening in the small temple he built. Otherwise, Lin Jin wouldn't have been able to enter the outer realm so quickly. How do we find God Lord Yin next? Spiritual Master Miao Yin asked. However, this wasn't a problem for Lin Jin. With a wave of his hand, a ball of flame floated out and coalesced into Xiaohua's appearance. However, the next instant, Xiaohua's body expanded abruptly. In the blink of an eye, he was 1,000 feet long. Like an ancient behemoth, he raised his head and howled, causing the ground to tremble. It was a sky-shaking wolf's howl. At Xiaohua's current level, his howl could cover the entire outer realm. As long as God Lord Yen was still in the outer realm, there was no way he wouldn't hear it. If he did, with God Lord Yan's intelligence, he would definitely know what was going on. Hence, Lin Jin took the initiative to challenge him on the battlefield. Now, it was up to God Lord Yen to show up. It was rare for Lin Jin to be this aggressive. This time, Lin Jin was confident enough to do so. The other immortals were stunned by Xiaohua's aura. Their jaws dropped as they mused that Lin Jin must have had a fortuitous encounter in the Nine-Heaven world. Otherwise, his cultivation couldn't have improved by such a terrifying amount. Previously, they had doubted if Lin Jin was a match for God Lord Yen. Now they were more confident. Now all they had to do was wait. Lin Jin stood on the spot with a calm expression. With his hands behind his back and his head raised, he waited quietly. Beside him, Lao Jun had his hands behind his back as well, chuckling as he waited. With these two big shots acting this way, the others didn't dare to make any noise. At that moment, the sound of falling leaves could be heard. Soon, a terrifying aura came from afar. First, it was the silhouette of a giant spider crawling over. On the spider's back were two figures, one large and one small. The larger figure was half human and half snake. His arms were abnormally long and his fingers were long and sharp like claws. Judging by his appearance, it was God Lord Yen. Just as the others had described, the current Lord God Yen was half human and half snake, and he already had the appearance of a saint. Back then, the great saint who used the heaven-mending spider to mend the sky looked exactly like this. However, in the paintings that were passed down from the ancient age, the saint had a benevolent and kind expression. At the moment, however, Sir God Yen looked like a ferocious demon with a murderous aura. As expected, the person standing behind Sir God Yen was Patriarch Xuepao. Lin Jin didn't see the beast god's cult leader. However, the cult leader alone was no longer a threat. Lin Jin could deal with him anytime he wanted. Lin Jin, it really is you. How dare you come looking for me? Upon seeing Lin Jin, there was a hint of cruelty in Lord Gu's eyes. There were also hints of excitement and pride. Aren't you also looking for me? As Lin Jin spoke, he scanned God Lord Yen from head to toe. While his expression remained calm, he was secretly on guard. The other party's strength had risen too quickly. Looking at the lower half of its body, it should have been devoured by the giant snake, but something went wrong halfway through. Then, Lord Gu fused with the snake's body. This was impossible no matter how Lin Jin looked at it. In terms of spells, it didn't make sense at all because no spell could achieve this. Logically speaking, it was impossible for two different species to forcefully fuse together. But now, it had happened, and Lin Jin had witnessed it with his own eyes. Hence, there must be something that prompted this change in Lord God Yen. Lin Jin's nose twitched. Heavenly Foundation Stone. Lin Jin instantly understood the reason behind this. Firstly, Lin Jin had sensed a faint aura earlier. It was familiar, similar to the aura in the Museum of Deadly Beasts. Secondly, Lin Jin learned more about the Heavenly Foundation Stone's function from his conversation with Lord Lotz. It could be said that the Heavenly Foundation Stone represented the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao could alter its rules at will. In other words, no matter how inconceivable it was, the Heavenly Tao's rules could achieve it. Because the Great Tao ruled over all things, it was like having one's wishes come true. To Lin Jin, only a fragment of the Heavenly Foundation Stone was capable of fusing Lord God Yen and the sage's snake body. Lord God Yen sure is lucky, Lin Jin mumbled inwardly. The sky-mending spider was the sage's pet. Having fused with the sage's body, Lord God Yen could naturally control the sky-mending spider. While Lin Jin was staring at Lord God Yen, the latter was also staring at Lin Jin. As if staring at a delicious prey, Lord God Yan's slightly deformed mouth started drooling. He opened his mouth, revealing a long snake head. Lin Jin could also see the rows of sharp teeth in his mouth. This was clearly the influence of the sage's body. Lin Jin immediately realized something. Lord God Yen must have sensed the Heavenly Foundation Stone's fragment. He probably wanted to skin Lin Jin alive and dig out the Heavenly Foundation Stone. More importantly, Lin Jin could tell that although Lord God Yen was extremely powerful, surpassing Xiaoyao Xian, his condition wasn't stable. He seemed half human and half snake, but Lord God Yan's body was still too weak. Hence, he was more affected by the sage's snake body. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become so deformed. His arms were 3 times longer than a normal person's and his sternum was protruding, revealing his long and narrow mouth. He looked like a monster. These were all signs of being affected by the sage's snake body. In other words, while Lord God Yen seemed powerful, his balance wasn't stable. He was probably relying on the Heavenly Foundation Stone's fragment to maintain his balance. Once he lost the Heavenly Foundation Stone's fragment, the consequences were obvious. Lord God Yan's immortal body couldn't withstand the sage's snake body. He would immediately collapse and die. This was Lord God Yan's weakness and Lin Jin thought he could take advantage of it. Lin Jin, this person is like an immortal yet not, like a sage yet not. If I had my full cultivation back then, it wouldn't be difficult to deal with him. After all, I was known as a half-sage back then. But I can't do that now. When the fight starts, I can only assist from the side. You have to be careful, Lao Jun said telepathically. Lin Jin nodded. When enemies met, there was no need for idle chatter. Just attack. Lin Jin made the first move. With a slap on the breezy monster's sword, a dazzling beam of sword light filled everyone's vision. There was nowhere to hide. The breezy monster's sword had improved tremendously as its power skyrocketed. Even an average true immortal expert wouldn't be able to block this attack. God Lord Yen, who was on the other side, laughed coldly. He did not move at all. Beside him, the heaven-mending spider had already spat out threads of spider silk, forming a barrier. Then, sparks flashed in all directions, and the sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly like a series of cannons. The spider silk blocked the sword energy. Lao Jun chuckled. I'll lend you a hand. Having said that, he chanted, Unstoppable! In an instant, the breezy monster's sword glowed brightly, and the sword energy it unleashed was twice as thick as before. The spider web barrier shattered and the sword energy went straight for Lord God Yan's head. Chapter 783. The breezy monster had obtained all of the unending nature landscape's divine sword scroll. With its current sharpness, even a true immortal would find it difficult to defend against it. It could even kill a true immortal. With Lao Juan's cursed sword token, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. It was no wonder the breezy monster's sword energy could break through the heaven-mending orb's spider web. Facing the sword energy, God Yen didn't dodge. Instead, he raised his deformed arm to block it. With the sound of metal clashing, the sword energy shattered. It was a crushing defeat. The breezy monster's sword energy couldn't harm God Yan's sage body at all. Fortunately, Lin Jin was aware of this. He had only done this to test the waters. He had also secretly flicked out his needles to check on God Yan. Lin Jin's plan was simple. Regardless of whether or not he was a sage, just based on God Yan's current appearance, even if he had the body of a sage, those who didn't know better would assume he was a monster cultivator who hadn't even learned how to transform. Moreover, he was a snake demon, a half-human, half-beast monster. Since he was a beast, the Museum of Deadly Beasts should be able to identify him. Lin Jin used his needles to assess God Yan's current condition and if there were any weaknesses he could exploit. It would be great if he could identify them, but if not, he wouldn't lose anything. He still had to fight. Of course, God Yan was oblivious to Lin Jin's thoughts. The latter looked smug. What can a mere sword energy do to me? Lin Jin, you've brought about your own destruction today. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Having said that, he pointed a finger and the rank 8 heaven-mending spider immediately pounced. Although Lin Jin's strength had skyrocketed, the rank 8 heaven-mending spider was still difficult to deal with. It was like a carefree immortal. If Lin Jin was alone, he would have to use Xiao Hua to deal with it. A rank 8 versus a rank 8. Otherwise, even true immortal experts like Sage Miao Yen and Sage Mystic Moon wouldn't be a match for the heaven-mending spider. If that was the case, Lin Jin's strongest combat power would be restrained. If Lin Jin had to fight against God Lord Ma, the situation would be difficult to predict. God Lord Ma's actual combat power was obviously not weaker than the heaven-mending spiders. Lin Jin was much weaker, and his chances of winning would be extremely slim. Fortunately, Lin Jin had brought along Old Lord, a top-notch expert from the immortal era. Although Old Lord was now immortal without immortal powers, Old Lord's rank 8 green carp was a bona fide carefree immortal. Especially after transforming into a dragon, the green carp's combat strength surpassed that of a carefree immortal. Back then, Old Lord even wanted to use the rank 8 green carp's transformation to challenge the immortal devouring beast. This was not only because the Grand Supreme Elder wanted revenge, but also because the black carp's transformation into a dragon had indeed given him enough confidence. Hence, there was no need for Lin Jin to speak. Old Lord had already used his trump card. The large green fish flew out and transformed into a huge green dragon to stop the sky-mending spider. "Thank you, Old Lord." Lin Jin expressed his gratitude while Old Lord chuckled. A sage's body isn't easy to deal with. Young friend, don't be careless. Lin Jin nodded. By keeping the sky-mending spider busy, God Lord Ma would have no more claws and wings. If they were to fight again, Lin Jin would have to fight them himself. As for Patriarch Xue Pao, who was hiding behind, Lin Jin had already noticed him. However, things were different now. In the past, Lin Jin couldn't deal with Patriarch Xue Pao. But now, Patriarch Xue Pao was no longer a threat. If God Lord Ma wasn't around, Lin Jin could kill Patriarch Xue Pao in a minute. Hence, Patriarch Xue Pao's luck was pretty good as he managed to avert disaster several times. But today, Lin Jin wasn't going to let God Lord Ma go, so he wouldn't let Patriarch Xue Pao escape again. No matter what, he had to get rid of these hidden threats. Otherwise, they would only be trouble in the future. Lin Jin was tired of these troubles and potential threats. Today, he would resolve everything. The needle couldn't pierce through God Lord Ma's sage body, but it was enough to complete the appraisal. After reading the Museum of Deadly Beasts description, Lin Jin had an idea. His guess was right. Sages were beasts too. However, they were unique. Back in the day, sages could maintain their serpent form and could even transform into humans. It was said that after their cultivation was successful, they were reborn and maintained a half-human, half-snake form. What others didn't know was that according to the Museum of Deadly Beasts, the sage's body had undergone more than 9,000 rebirths before he could achieve his current appearance and powers. Each rebirth required at least 100 years. No doubt, Lin Jin had no chance of winning against a sage. Forget him, even the powerful old lord who could rival an immortal emperor in power back then was no match for this sage. Fortunately, Lin Jin wasn't facing that sage but God Lord Ma, who had borrowed the power of the Heavenly Tao's cornerstone fragment to forcefully fuse with half of the sage's body. To put it bluntly, God Lord Ma wasn't in a stable state and the amount of sage power he could use was extremely limited. He might not even be able to use 10% of his power. With this, Lin Jin still had a chance of winning. Xiao Hua, go! With a plan in mind, Lin Jin wasted no time. Xiao Hua immediately transformed into a blazing flame and pounced at God Lord Ma. The latter sneered and a golden light emitted from his body. His body instantly doubled in size and in a flash, he was right in front of Lin Jin. His speed was so fast that no one could react in time. Even Lin Jin was startled. Looking up, he saw God Lord Ma's massive claw coming for his head. Fortunately, Xiaohua was fast enough and was connected to Lin Jin through a blood contract. Using the remaining flames in Lin Jin's body, Xiaohua surged upward and morphed into a huge flaming wolf head that lunged at God Lord Ma's claw. The fight was a fierce one. The wolf head's attack sent God Lord Ma flying more than 100 feet away, saving Lin Jin from danger. However, God Lord Ma reached out and grabbed the flaming wolf head's neck. This could be considered Xiaohua's doppelganger, which was completely made up of flames. Flames were originally formless, like flowing water or air, and could not be grabbed at all. However, God Lord Yan's claw seemed to have a demonic nature, and it actually grabbed the fire wolf beast doppelganger and crushed it directly. With a crack, the flames shattered and scattered on the ground. The resulting shockwave forced everyone to retreat. Lin Jin used the force to leap backward, moving several hundred feet away. Although Xiaohua's clone was far inferior to his original form, it definitely had combat strength surpassing that of a true immortal. Yet, God Lord Ma easily crushed it to death. This was enough to show the might of a sage. Although God Lord Ma could only borrow a small amount of power, it was still not an easy opponent. During this time, Xiaohua's original form had arrived. The next moment, he was engaged in a fierce battle with God Lord Ma. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Lin Jin and the others retreated once more to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. At the same time, the fact that Lin Jin was almost beheaded by God Lord Ma scared the immortals out of their wits. Reverend Miao Yen and Reverend Mystic Moon immediately stood by Lin Jin's sides like guardians, guarding against another sneak attack. Chapter 784. After being refined by the heaven and earth furnace, Xiaohua, who had advanced to the 8th level, was extremely powerful. His control of flames had reached an unimaginable level. Just by looking at the battle scene, it was obvious that Xiaohua had the upper hand. However, Sir God Ma Yen had the body of a saint. At that moment, his entire body was covered with a layer of fine scale armor. The scale armor was impervious to fire and water. Even if it was burned by the raging flames, it would not be damaged at all. The indestructible body of Vajra was a little difficult to deal with. It meant that attacking him was ineffective. Other than that, God Lord Yen was getting more and more courageous as the battle went on. Furthermore, his pair of mutated, deformed claws could capture flames. At the moment, Xiaohua seemed to have the upper hand. However, if this went on, the situation might change. Appraiser Lin, something's not right. Spiritual Master Wondrous Yen was the first to notice the problem, so he couldn't help but comment. Lin Jin could see it too, but he remained composed. Appraiser Lin, why don't we gang up on him? We might be able to find his weakness and kill him, Venerable Mystic Moon suggested. She had an irreconcilable feud with Sir God Gu. At that moment, her enemy was right in front of her, but she couldn't kill him. One could imagine how Reverend Xianyue felt. Lin Jin shook his head. Sage Mystic Moon, even if we all attack him together, it won't work. This God Lord cover has fused with a sage's body, and this sage's body is indestructible. It's impossible to destroy. Clearly, Lin Jin had identified the item with his needle earlier. At Lin Jin's words, the other immortals were shocked. If that was the case, they had no chance of winning. In the end, they would still lose. Moreover, what Lin Jin said wasn't false. They too had heard of the means of saints. According to some ancient texts, the reason why saints could become saints was because they had gone through hundreds of thousands of years, experienced the beginning of the world, and experienced countless disasters. Their bodies had long become immortal and their cultivation was exceedingly high. This was common knowledge. Even if Sir God Guy could only unleash a small portion of the saint's divine sense, he was still invincible. Hence, Sage Wondrous Yen and Mystic Moon's expressions darkened because they knew Lin Jin was right. Even if they attacked together, it would be useless. Heaven Mender Sage was an existence that surpassed the Elder Lord of the Immortal Gate. Even the Elder Lord and the Immortal Emperor at the peak of the Immortal Tao couldn't defeat Heaven Mender Sage. But it's not like there's no other way, Lin Jin added. This time, he took a deep breath, causing everyone to be stunned. Based on what Lin Jin said, he seemed to have a way to deal with God Guy. However, neither Sage Mystic Moon nor Sage Ingenious Yen could come up with a solution. On the other side, the Grand Supreme Elder was also frowning. Little friend Lin, the fusion between Lord Yen and the sage's body has been stabilized. Even if he can only unleash 10% of the sage's power, we won't be able to deal with him. Old Lord was obviously out of ideas as well, probably doubting whether Lin Jin's idea would work. The one we're dealing with is Divine Lord Yen, not Heaven Mending Saint. Therefore, we only need to separate Divine Lord Yen and Heaven Mending Saint's bodies. Lin Jin didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Separate? The immortals were stunned. How were they going to split this? That half-human, half-snake thing was so powerful that every part of its body was indestructible. Sword chi and flames couldn't do anything to it, so it was extremely difficult to separate it. What was the difference between that and killing it directly? Only Old Lord was stunned after hearing Lin Jin's words. He seemed to be deep in thought. Admittedly, the older, the wiser. Old Lord was knowledgeable, and after Lin Jin's reminder, he immediately thought of a key point. Little friend Lin, you mean to say that Divine Lord Yen and Heaven Mending Saint shouldn't have fused into one, but due to some special circumstances, could it be a fragment of the Heavenly Tao's cornerstone? Old Lord knew this, so he immediately came to a realization. To him, only a fragment of the Heavenly Tao's cornerstone could fuse something that shouldn't have been possible. Lin Jin nodded. Old Lord's eyes lit up, but he immediately thought of a crucial problem. Even if we know, how do we extract the Heavenly Tao's cornerstone? Old Lord asked. Indeed, the Grand Supreme Elder could think of the theory, but how to solve it in practice and actually do it was another matter. Sometimes there was a world of difference between thinking about it and being able to do it. Old Lord initially thought that Lin Jin had only thought of a solution, but he didn't know that Lin Jin had even thought of how to carry it out. Wise Sage Miao Yen, Mystic Moon, I'll be dealing with Divine Lord Yen later. Although Lin Jin is confident in this, it's still a dangerous task and we can't afford any mistake. There's also Patriarch Shui Pao hiding there, so I implore both of you to kill him or restrain him so that he won't disturb Lin Jin. Lin Jin didn't mean to waste time. He was just calculating the chances of success of this plan. Even if he knew how to deal with Divine Lord Yen, it would still be incredibly dangerous to actually do it. A moment of carelessness could cost him his life. Heaven Mending Spider was being restrained by Old Lord's green carp, so he didn't have to worry about it for now. The only one he had to be wary of was Patriarch Shui Pao. Lin Jin was still wary of Patriarch Shui Pao. The man was cunning and there was no telling when he would come out and mess things up. Hence, for Lin Jin to come up with a foolproof plan, he had to consider all aspects and eliminate all potential threat. Wise sage Miao Yen and Mystic Moon didn't say a word. Ever since they saw Lin Jin's pet beast, they knew that Lin Jin's combat strength had surpassed theirs. Moreover, even Old Lord listened to Lin Jin's opinion. Hence, they dared not defy Lin Jin's orders. The two true immortals immediately pounced on Patriarch Xue Pao. Knowing that he was no match for them, the ever-vigilant Patriarch Xue Pao fled in fear. Now that the interference was gone, Lin Jin took a deep breath and rode a cloud toward Divine Lord Yen and Xiao Hua's battle. "Be careful," Old Lord warned from behind. He could roughly guess Lin Jin's plan now. Indeed, Heaven Mender had an indestructible body, and the only thing that could corrode this saint's body was the Heavenly Tao's foundation stone itself. Other than that, no spells or artifacts would work. In other words, even if Lin Jin knew where the Heavenly Tao's foundation stone fragment was, he wouldn't be able to retrieve it. However, there was an exception. If someone else borrowed the Heavenly Tao's foundation stone's power, they could break the saint's indestructible body. Old Lord already knew that Lin Jin had a Heavenly Tao's foundation stone fragment. In other words, only Lin Jin could break Heaven Mender's indestructible body. Hence, Lin Jin rode a cloud over. This was indeed dangerous. After all, Lin Jin's physical strength was 100 or even 1,000 times weaker than Divine Lord Yan's. A moment of carelessness or bad luck would spell the end for him. But at the same time, this was the only way to defeat Divine Lord Yen. After figuring this out, the Grand Supreme Elder's expression gradually became solemn. Just as Old Lord had guessed, Lin Jin's plan was indeed as such. However, Lin Jin didn't know where his Heavenly Tao's foundation stone fragment was. After all, the Museum of Deadly Beasts could be considered a world derived from the Heavenly Tao's foundation stone fragment. If that was the case, Lin Jin could open the visitation hall's door and borrow the museum's power to attack. That should work. This was Lin Jin's plan to win. Chapter 785. Lin Jin was afraid too. This method of winning was actually very dangerous. However, if it was successful, they would be able to see immediate results and kill Sir God Guy. God Lord Yen had to be eliminated. Moreover, it was better to kill him earlier than later. The reason was simple. If this dragged on, God Lord Yan's fusion with the sage body would gradually stabilize. By then, it would be impossible to disrupt this balance. If that happened, Lin Jin had no idea how else he could restrain God Lord Yen. God Lord Yen would surely become a second existence like the rank 9 immortal devourer. Lin Jin would never allow this to happen, especially since God Lord Yen held a grudge against him. He couldn't allow this enemy to grow any stronger. He had to be eliminated. He had to do it now. Even if he had to bear a certain risk, Lin Jin was willing to do it. It was better than watching God Lord Yen grow stronger and get crushed by him. Lin Jin steered his cloud forward, his full attention on God Lord Yen. His body had grown twice as big as before. Judging by his appearance, he no longer resembled a human. God Lord Yen now resembled a monster, moving at breakneck speeds as he fought Xiao Hua in a stalemate. Xiao Hua was now a rank 8 pet beast and was definitely stronger than the average immortal. This was a testament to God Lord Yan's current strength. As soon as Lin Jin got closer, God Lord Yen noticed him. "Lin Jin, how dare you come here? You're asking for it." God Lord Yen sneered before pouncing at Lin Jin. Lin Jin calmly responded by patting the 4 Seas Freedom Gourd. A ball of spiritual water floated out and surrounded Lin Jin. The moment God Lord Yen came over, he was hit by the ball of water. Despite it being just a ball of water, it felt like a mountain was pressing down on God Lord Yen, forcing him to take several steps back. Xiao Hua caught up to him and was able to suppress him for now. Lin Jin was sweating profusely. It was too dangerous. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if Lin Jin were to fight God Lord Yen, he would be no match for him within a certain distance. Hence, Lin Jin's plan of opening the visitation hall's door to kill God Lord Yen might not work. Because before Lin Jin could open the door, he would be killed by God Lord Yen. His opponent was too ferocious. Lin Jin hesitated. However, given the current situation, Lin Jin had no choice but to release the arrow. He had no choice but to hesitate. God Lord Gu grabbed a random tree, uprooted it with a casual tug, and threw it at Lin Jin. The tree was over 100 meters long, and it was moving at breakneck speed. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Lin Jin. Alarmed, the breezy monster sword at his waist had already unleashed more than 10 sword energies, slicing the tree into pieces. In an instant, wood shavings filled the air, splattering all over Lin Jin. Just as he regained his senses, Lord God Yen swung his tail and several boulders came flying at him. Helpless, Lin Jin had no choice but to deal with them. But then, he realized a problem. The more divine Lord Yen fought, the braver he became. This wasn't a good sign. Initially, Lin Jin thought he could rest easy once Xiao He reached rank 8, but it seemed like he was too naive. Blood mist oozed out of Lin Jin's body. This was Lin Jin's ghost blood beast. Now, Lin Jin had to use all of his trump cards. Otherwise, things could get messed up at any time. Fresh blood condensed in Lin Jin's hand, forming a blood spear that was about 10 feet long. Inside the blood spear was a spirit devourer ghost worm. Lin Jin had no choice but to try and see if this could suppress Lord Guan. Go! With a single thought, the blood spear flew out. Like a siege crossbow, it drew a bloody arc through the air and pierced Lord Guan's chest. The spirit devourer ghost worm inside the blood spear immediately pounced forward to bite. One spirit devourer ghost worm was enough to deal with a regular immortal, and it was the same for a true immortal. But now, the blood spear had shattered and hundreds of spirit devourer ghost worms were crawling all over Lord Guan's body, tearing at him. It was a horrifying scene. A regular immortal would have been dead by now, but Lord Guan only let out a few cries of pain. Lin Jin took a closer look. The spirit devourer ghost worm was having a hard time biting through God Yan's scales. Even when the rank 7 ghost blood beast conjured a blood spear with all its might, it only managed to leave a scratch on one of God Yan's scales. To God Yan, this was nothing. The spirit devourer ghost worms were ineffective too. Because once the spirit devourer ghost worms entered Lord Guan's body, they immediately lost contact with him. Lin Jin knew that this method wouldn't work. Sure enough, Lord Guan sneered. Lin Jin, do you think you can defeat me just because you stole a few of my spirit devourer ghost worms? Fool, don't forget that I was the one who nurtured these spirit devourer ghost worms. My understanding of these things far surpasses yours. That might not be the case, Lin Jin bellowed. However, he didn't seem very confident. The next instant, he condensed another blob of blood into the shape of a giant claw. Just like before, he chanted Go, and the giant claw swiped at God Lord Yen. A burst of sage energy erupted from Lord Guan's body, forcing Xiao Hua to retreat. Lord Guan's aura was unparalleled as he smirked. Lin Jin, it's useless even if you use everything you have. I must kill you today. The immortals behind him wore solemn expressions. Lord Guan is getting stronger and stronger. He can already suppress Lin Jin's pet beast. This is troublesome. Even Lao Tzu wore a grim expression. He could clearly see that Lord Guan was using his fight with Xiao Hua to speed up the assimilation process with the sage's body. This was really unexpected. Moreover, the elderly lord realized something. Sir God Yen was actually using the fight with Xiao Hua to refine himself. This Lord Guan is full of tricks. He may seem reckless and arrogant, but he's actually a schemer. He's purposely using the fire wolf's flames to refine the sage's body. This is bad. After Lao Tzu realized this, he immediately sent a voice transmission to Lin Jin. Upon learning of this, Lin Jin cursed inwardly. But so what if he found out now? Xiaohua had to stop Lord Guan. Otherwise, if he retreated, who would fight Lord Guan? Lin Jin had no other combat power available. Even though he knew that Lord Guan was using Xiaohua's flames to refine his body and improve his cultivation, Lin Jin had no other choice. Lin Jin knew he couldn't drag this out any longer. Controlling the ghost blood beasts to coil around him, coupled with the Four Seas Freedom Gord's spirit water armor, Lin Jin charged forward. Lord Guan's bloody claw had already been destroyed by Lord Guan. Seeing how Lin Jin couldn't do anything to him despite his best efforts, the latter laughed gleefully. Now that Lord Guan had the upper hand, he was using his opponent's flames to refine his body. It was a pity that his opponent realized this too late. Now that Lord Guan could use 20% of his sage's power, victory was basically guaranteed. With this, Lord Guan was no longer in a hurry. He wanted to toy with his opponent. Only then would he be satisfied. Seeing Lin Jin charging at him, Lord Guan smirked. In a flash, he teleported away and caught Lin Jin in the blink of an eye. The blood mist and spirit water on Lin Jin's body couldn't last long under Lord Guan's sharp claws. They began to crumble and Lin Jin's body began to bleed in excruciating pain. Lin Jin, let's see what else you can do now. Lord Guan felt like he could squash Lin Jin like an ant if he exerted more strength. Lin Jin looked like he was in pain, but he said, "Lord Guan, let me tell you something." "What is it?" Lord Guan asked with a smirk. "Villains die because they talk too much." Lin Jin enunciated each word clearly. Halfway through his sentence, a door suddenly opened behind him, and a wave of righteous aura rippled out. Following that was a surge of energy that helped Lin Jin break free from Lord Guan's grasp. He clenched his claws and struck forward. Lin Jin's counterattack was so sudden that Lord Guan couldn't react in time. He felt a chill run down his spine. "I'm going to kill you!" Lord Guan lashed out with his claws, trying to tear Lin Jin apart. However, Lin Jin had already retreated into the door behind him, so Lord Guan couldn't attack him. There was a bloody hole in Lord Guan's chest, and the flesh inside was a mess. His heart had been forcefully dug out. God Lord Guan was terrified. Following that, his power flowed away like a deflated balloon. God Lord Guan's pain did not end there. Half of his snake body began to separate from his upper body, and his flesh began to rot. The most terrifying part was that half of his snake body was like a gaping maw that began devouring Lord Guan's body. In an instant, Lord Guan was completely devoured by that horrifying snake body. Chapter 786. No one expected this battle to end like this, not even Lin Jin. All he knew was that the only way to defeat God-Man was to destroy the balance between God-Man and the sage's body. To him, the most he could do was to make God-Man lose control of the sage's body. This way, God-Man would become a slightly more powerful true immortal. With Xiaohua around, God-Man could be easily bullied. However, he did not expect that once the balance with the sage's body was broken, Sir God Yen would be devoured by the sage's body and die so miserably. Perhaps this was the price of using the power of a saint. The snake's sharp fangs devoured Sir God cover. Then, it looked as if it hadn't had enough, and it turned to look at Lin Jin. Stunned, Lin Jin prepared to retreat. No one knew what this giant serpent was up to. What if it didn't have enough to eat? Lin Jin's worry wasn't unfounded. Judging by Lord Meng's condition, he must have been devoured by the giant snake earlier, but something unexpected happened after consuming half of his body. Perhaps Lord Meng accidentally found the Heaven's Foundation fragment and used its power to form a balance, allowing him to control the sage's body. If it weren't for this, God-Man would have been long dead. Admittedly, Lin Jin's speculation was pretty much the same as the reality. This brought up another problem. If the Heavenly Axiom's cornerstone fragment could become the key to using a sage's body, it meant that everyone else, including Lin Jin, could do the same. Just like God-Man-Man, he could use the heavenly foundation fragment to control the sacred body. This was a tempting thought. Lin Jin had witnessed and experienced God-Man-Man's terror with his own eyes. With the Museum of Deadly Beasts, Lin Jin's knowledge and abilities far surpassed God-Man-Man's, allowing him to eliminate potential dangers in advance. With the sacred body, he wouldn't have to fear even an immortal devouring beast. In all fairness, Lin Jin was extremely tempted. But soon, he calmed down because God-Man-Man's fate was right before his eyes. Lin Jin clearly saw how horrifying God-Man-Man's death was. Even if Lin Jin could avoid most dangers and prevent this sage's body from losing control, who could guarantee that there wouldn't be a what if? Lin Jin had previously appraised this sacred body. While the heavenly foundation fragment could indeed suppress the sacred body, it wasn't foolproof. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of losing control, death was the only outcome. After all, those who play with fire will burn themselves. After giving it some thought, Lin Jin decided against it. Even the Museum of Deadly Beasts method couldn't guarantee a 100% success rate, so it was better to be conservative. Moreover, fusing with this sage's body was a little disgusting. Just by looking at this deformed snake, Lin Jin had no intention of doing so. It was like a plate of food that was completely unappetizing or filled with filth and maggot. If you were forced to eat it, would you be able to eat it? Obviously not. Hence, as long as this sage's body didn't come looking for trouble, Lin Jin didn't want to have anything to do with it. If it insisted on fighting to the death, Lin Jin would give it his all. Either way, he couldn't just sit around and wait for death. At this moment, balls of flesh and blood extended out of the fanged mouth on the sage's body. They began to twist and deform, and finally condensed into the appearance of a human. This person was also half human, half snake. He had a strong physique, 3 eyes, 4 ears, and a primitive aura. "This is the sage himself," old Supreme Elder said from behind. By then, the sky-mending spider had retreated and was guarding the sage's body. Just by looking at its upper body, it was dignified and intimidating without being angry. It exuded a majestic aura that made people want to worship it. Meanwhile, its lower body was abnormally hideous with a twisted snake body that resembled a monster. It was hard to imagine that these two things, one good and the other evil, could exist in one body at the same time and get along so well. Lin Jin felt like this was similar to the balance of yin and yang mentioned by the heavenly axiom, where good and evil coexisted. However, the upper body of the saint had its 3 eyes closed, as if it was asleep. Strangely enough, after the upper body of the saint appeared, the pressure from the giant snake weakened a lot. It was as if the other party had once again achieved a balance. This was like a balance between positive and negative. The sage's upper body represented good, while its lower body represented evil. Only when good and evil coexisted would it conform to the heavenly axiom and comply with the heavenly axiom. Only then could a balance be achieved. On the other hand, Lord Man-Man was incomparably evil. With the help of the sage's lower body that was originally an evil creature, even if he was sustained by the heavenly axiom's cornerstone fragment, it was only a matter of time before he crumbled. Lin Jin only realized this now. In other words, even if he didn't come to suppress Lord Man-Man, the sage wouldn't be able to run wild for long. Just then, the sage moved. With 3 eyes closed, the sage saluted Lin Jin before retreating. A spiderweb appeared behind him. Lin Jin didn't know what kind of supernatural power it was, but the sage vanished into thin air together with the sky-mending spider. They left. No one knew how they got here or why they left. No one dared to stop them or ask. However, the sage saluted Lin Jin before he left, leaving a deep impression on everyone. When Lin Jin returned, old Supreme Elder deliberately asked in a whisper, "Young friend Lin, are you acquainted with Sage Sky Mender?" Lin Jin shook his head. Old Supreme Elder smiled meaningfully, clearly not believing Lin Jin. Old Supreme Elder could still ask, but none of the other immortals dared. They were now looking at Lin Jin with reverence. After all, the one who saluted Lin Jin was Sage Sky Mender. To immortals, Sage Sky Mender was a godlike existence. Even Old Supreme Elder, the founder of immortality, was just a child compared to Sage Sky Mender. He wasn't worth mentioning. Lin Jin couldn't explain this, so there was no need for him to. Patriarch Xue Pao was captured. It wasn't that Sage Miao Yen and Sage Mystic Moon were merciful, but Patriarch Xue Pao had other tricks up his sleeve. He was almost immortal. No matter how he was killed, burned, or struck by lightning, he would always come back to life. Hence, the two Sage Masters had no choice but to capture him and bring him back. Patriarch Xue Pao no longer looked human. His body was pierced by 3 spirit-anchoring needles, and he was tied up by the immortal rotting rope. There was even a 5 mountains talisman stuck to his body. Being stuck to his body felt like several mountains were pressing down on him. Patriarch Xue Pao couldn't even breathe, let alone run away. He was tortured to the point where he wished he was dead. Lin Jin wanted to interrogate Patriarch Xue Pao, so it was better to keep him alive. Moreover, with Lin Jin's current cultivation realm and skills, Patriarch Xue Pao wouldn't be Lin Jin's match even at his peak. In short, Patriarch Xue Pao was doomed now that he was in Lin Jin's hands. Lin Jin had expended a lot of energy fighting God Lord Cover, so he decided to recuperate outside the realm. Coincidentally, Xian Dao sect and Cloud Path sect needed to rebuild their sects as well. Aside from recuperating, Lin Jin would either chat with Old Supreme Elder, play chess, or interrogate Patriarch Xue Pao. Lin Jin learned from Patriarch Xue Pao how God Lord Cover fused with the sage's body. It was basically what Lin Jin expected. Lin Jin had been very relaxed lately. After all, he no longer had any strong enemies. Experts like God Lord Cover, Patriarch Xue Pao, and the bestial soul cult master were either killed or imprisoned. With that, Lin Jin was no longer a threat and his days returned to their peaceful state. Chapter 787. The new Maple City was starting to take shape. Now that the Jade Dragon Kingdom had been promoted to a premium country, the cities within the kingdom had undergone extensive reconstruction. Maple City was now on par with the royal capital in terms of scale. In fact, it was even more famous than before. The reason for this was none other than Lin Jin's residence. Ever since Lin Jin returned to live here a year ago, prominent figures often came to visit. Some of them were even nobles from other countries. Each of them were people who could stir up a storm with just a stomp of their feet. And yet, every single one of them was extremely respectful, as if they were meeting a saint. Even the emperor of a premium country had been here before. But no matter who it was, they had to dismount from their steeds in front of this seemingly ordinary mansion and obtain the owner's permission before they dared to enter. Although Lin Jin could go anywhere in the world with his current cultivation level, he still preferred to stay in Maple City. After all, this was his starting point. The Lin family's mansion had been renovated long ago. Located in the middle of Maple City's bustling streets, it was quiet amidst all the hustle and bustle. The yard was filled with trees and a flowing stream, making it feel like spring all year round. This was because Lin Jin had used many immortal spells on this tiny mansion, and there was a world inside it. Despite being just a mansion, it could easily fit 10 Maple Cities inside. No matter how big it was, Lin Jin could do it. But there was no need for that. Lin Jin couldn't be bothered either. He just wanted to live comfortably. Shonger, White Ape, and the rest of the monsters cultivated in Lin Jin's inner universe. Each of them occupied a mountain, and it was a pleasant experience. Over the past year, under Lin Jin's guidance, the monsters' cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Others might not know, but Lin Jin knew that Shonger and White Ape had reached immortal beast level, especially Shonger. If one were to compare her to a hollow immortal, she was definitely the strongest. At first, they were only on par with Xiaohua. But now, at rank 8, Xiaohua could crush all of them. For the past year, Lin Jin had let Xiaohua out most of the time, allowing him to roam freely in Microcosm World. After all, Lin Jin felt bad for having him trapped inside his body. Many things had happened in the past year. The Beast Appraiser Academy in the Jade Dragon Kingdom was also set up in full swing. In just a year, the Academy's popularity had already surpassed that of Heavenly Jade Academy, making it the second sacred land in the eyes of beast appraisers from all over the world. In terms of ranking, it had even surpassed the Heavenly Jade Academy. Lin Jin's previous students, namely Zhao Ying, Lu Xiaoyun, and Jia Qian, had all become official beast appraisers. Just like Lin Jin, they were all promoted to rank 2. It could be said that the few of them could hold their own now. Lin Jin continued to visit the visitation hall once every 7 days. However, he spent most of his time chatting with the visitors and occasionally giving them pointers. As for his curator identity, Lin Jin planned to keep it a secret. This identity was of great use to Lin Jin as curator, had helped him a lot in the past. Who knew if he could use it again in the future? Once the days became leisurely, time would fly by like flowing water. It was so fast that people wouldn't be able to react, and they wouldn't even realize it. If it weren't for Old Lord's visit, Lin Jin might still be enjoying his carefree life. It was as if the world was at peace and there was nothing that could threaten him anymore. Young friend Lin, you seem to be living a leisurely life. Old Lord was currently at Lin Jin's home as a guest. Looking at the microcosm world that Lin Jin had created, he took a sip of the tea Lin Jin brewed himself and said, "Old Lord, it's been a while." Lin Jin laughed. Ever since they parted ways in the foreign lands, it had been a year since he last saw Old Lord. Rumor had it that Old Lord had begun traveling around Middle-earth, living a carefree life. Hence, when it came to leisure, Lin Jin felt that he paled in comparison to Old Lord who was traveling around. Compared to Old Lord, Lin Jin was just an otaku. Then, Lin Jin asked Old Lord about his experiences in the past year. This piqued Old Lord's interest, and he began telling Lin Jin about it. When he got to the most vivid parts, both of them laughed heartily. Somewhere in the microcosm world, Little Five was puzzled. She asked Xiang'er, "Sister, who's here today? Why is Master Lin so happy?" "A terrible old man," White Ape answered. White Ape had been able to shapeshift for a long time. However, he still had a head of white hair and a strong physique. He didn't usually speak much, but when he did, he would spout a lot of golden phrases that left a deep impression on others. "What do you mean by terrible old man?" "That's the founder of Immortal Cultivation, a half-saint immortal. His status is much higher than that of an immortal emperor, Old Lord." Xiang'er was more educated than Little Five and White Ape, so she could speak eloquently. Now, she began lecturing Little Five and White Ape. Little Five and White Ape rarely bowed to anyone, but they were obedient in front of Xiang'er. They knew a little about Old Lord. In short, he was a very powerful character. Stronger than an immortal emperor? How powerful is that? Can he be stronger than our Master Lin? White Ape looked unconvinced. To him, no one in this world could be stronger than Lin Jin. He wasn't the only one who thought so. Everyone else shared the same thought. "White Ape, don't spout nonsense. Master Lin has always taught us to be humble and that there's always someone better than us. We mustn't be arrogant and conceited," Xiang'er lectured with a straight face. White Ape could only listen obediently. Just then, Xiang'er heard Lin Jin's call. She immediately cast wind manipulation and floated over. "Master Lin." Xiang'er bowed. Lin Jin nodded. "Xiang'er, come and greet Old Lord." Not daring to disobey, Xiang'er immediately bowed at Old Lord. Old Lord stroked his beard and laughed. "Young friend Lin, your disciples are all talented. Impressive." Thank you for your praise, old lord. Despite his words, Lin Jin was actually quite happy. After all, it was rare for his land to receive Old Lord's praise. Old Lord obviously had something to discuss with Lin Jin. Lin Jin was going on a long trip, so he called Shang'er over to inform her. Upon hearing that Lin Jin was going out, Shang'er's first reaction was to follow him. Lin Jin shook his head. Not just you, I can't bring anyone with me. Seeing how determined Lin Jin was, Shang'er didn't dare to say anything else. However, judging from Lin Jin's attitude, he must be going somewhere unusual. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that. Indeed, Old Lord had come to Lin Jin for something important. After killing God Cover and capturing Patriarch Xuepao, everything was considered a success. After that, Lin Jin and Old Lord went their separate ways. Old Lord roamed the world to save her life while Lin Jin returned to lead a peaceful life. As for the next step, Lin Jin purposely didn't talk about it because dealing with the immortal devouring beast wasn't Lin Jin's main goal. He was immortal and the immortal devouring beast didn't target mortals. Moreover, after interrogating Patriarch Xuepao, Lin Jin obtained the Black Fog Ghost Cage and had a way to control it. His immortal friends could also use the Black Fog to explore the world from time to time. It wasn't a bad idea. With that, why should he make an enemy out of the immortal devouring beast? There was no need. Moreover, the Museum of Deadly Beasts no longer provided Xiaohuo with a way to evolve. Lin Jin had always relied on the museum, and it had become a habit. Now that it was gone, Lin Jin was like a headless chicken, at a loss for what to do. This was also why Lin Jin didn't continue evolving Xiaohuo. Without enemies like God Cover, Beast God's cult leader, and Patriarch Xuepao, a rank 8 Xiaohuo was enough to support Lin Jin to become an invincible existence. On one hand, he could continue living a carefree life. On the other hand, he wouldn't be able to evolve any further. Lin Jin chose to stop because it was the easiest and most comfortable choice. Old Lord came to Lin Jin this time to talk to him about something. Old Lord said that the last celestial realm in the Nine Heavens world, the primordial immortal mountain, where the heavenly axiom's cornerstone was located, had been experiencing unusual fluctuations recently. Old Lord was an expert in divination and his consecutive readings had all been ominous. However, Old Lord wasn't divining his name but the general trend of the world. Upon hearing this, Lin Jin knew that this was no small matter. Old Lord wanted to accompany Lin Jin to check out the situation and Lin Jin agreed. Finding out the truth was better than being kept in the dark. Moreover, Old Lord couldn't find anyone else. In this world, including immortals, Lin Jin was the only one qualified to go to the immortal mountain with Old Lord. Hence, he came to Lin Jin's Temple of Three Treasures. One could imagine how dangerous the last celestial realm in the Nine Heavens world was, especially with immortal devouring beasts residing there. To be on the safe side, Lin Jin couldn't bring anyone else along. If he went alone, he would be able to handle any trouble he encountered without being a burden. After instructing Shang'er, Lin Jin didn't inform anyone else. Instead, he flew up on a cloud with Old Lord. They were just two mortals, but they were as powerful as immortals. It was quite a sight to behold. With Old Lord around, Lin Jin didn't have to worry about how to enter the Nine Heavens world. Even without Old Lord, Lin Jin had secretly buried a few divine gates in the world so he could enter and leave freely. Old Lord, if the world's divination is ominous, doesn't that mean there's going to be a disaster? But I don't see any signs of disaster. Could you have made a mistake, Old Lord? Lin Jin and Old Lord were good friends despite their age difference. When it was just the two of them, Lin Jin spoke casually and freely. Old Lord was the same. He could still put on airs in front of others, but he was much more relaxed around Lin Jin. What do you know? I've eaten more salt than you've eaten in 10 lifetimes. Besides, I'm also the originator of divination. I've verified it many times, so I won't be wrong. I'm afraid that something big will really happen this time. The old Supreme Elder's expression turned solemn at the last sentence. Lin Jin stopped joking and asked for more details. Only then did he find out that old Lord had a habit of divining every day. In recent months, there had been some changes in his divination. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.